Good morning, Mayor Robinson. We are good to go.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the West Grey Council meeting for May 3rd, 2022. I am calling this meeting to order under item number 1. All members of council are present. There is a quorum. I want to remind everyone that we are using the revised agenda. Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, could you please at this time explain the electronic features of our meeting?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Robinson. Before I begin, if at any point you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and were raising their hands physically on camera to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance throughout the duration of the meeting, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, and I will attempt to assist you. For members of the public, it should be noted that public participation, if any, must be done through the Zoom meeting platform and cannot be done through YouTube at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, moment of reflection. At this time, if you care to do so, please take a quiet pause. Thank you. Item number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Members of council, is there anything to declare at this time? Thank you. Item 4, delegations presentations for this particular agenda, that is an NA. Item 5, public meetings, an NA. Item 6, comment period. In accordance with the West Grey procedural bylaw, comments may be made to council with respect to a specific agenda item. A maximum of 2 minutes per person is allotted for comments, with a maximum of 10 minutes in total for comment period. Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, could you please assist me in determining if there's anyone from the public that wishes to partake in item number 6?
Yes, absolutely. As mentioned at the start of the meeting, public participation, if any, must be done through the Zoom meeting platform and cannot be done through YouTube at this time. Members of the public wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting may do so in a multitude of ways. The first being, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let me know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if your hand has been raised in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. For members of the public who have joined us using the Zoom meeting platform online, you can either send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, either stating that you would like to speak or what you would like read into the record on your behalf, or you can raise your hand, which is typically located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen under the More options by either a blue or yellow hand icon, depending on your device. Just taking a quick review of the dashboard as well as the chat. Mayor Robinson, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to item number 7, unfinished business for this agenda, that is an NA. Item 8, adoption of minutes. 8.1, April 13th, 2022 special council meeting minutes. Any comments on this? 8.2, April 19th, 2022 council meeting minutes. Any comments? Clerk Sharbeck, could you please read the recommendation at hand?
Through you, Mayor Robinson, the recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting of April 13th, 2022 and regular council meeting of April 19th, 2022 are hereby approved as circulated.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hamilton. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor. Questions on the motion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. Item 9, committee and board reports. 9.1, West Grey Trails Advisory Committee, April 14th, 2022 minutes. With regards to the minutes, are there any comments? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to speak to the minutes briefly. As you know from the last meeting, we did ask staff to do a report about trails and where we're going with that. But in the meantime, our committee has met, and I've met with the Donna Lacey from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority and Steve Earhart, our Public Works, just to look at what the possibilities are going forward in terms of trying to shore up some of our liabilities and controlling some of the access on the section from the lower dam to Park Street. So we did look at gating gates, what it would cost, or where the gates should go in terms of in the future to be able to control that access. And so we come up with an idea of there's 5 gates needed in that section to control motorized vehicles. So that was one of our recommendations in there, is that we go ahead and look at pricing for gates and what it would cost to do the job. And the other was to do some work on the stone dust. The trail is being used, and there's a couple of sections that does need some work. So we wondered if we could maybe go ahead and get some stone dust and get a crew together to do some work and just sort of tidy things up so that when people do use it, there's no issues with tripping and falling. And we did look at another area that was that would have to be corrected a little bit for accessibility. Public Works said that they didn't fix that up. So there are a couple of recommendations there that would allow us to continue to move forward. But in the meantime, I did find from the county level, there's they have a couple of policies in place having to do with trails, and their trail in particular, the one that the rail trail that runs from Dundalk to Long Sound. They have a whole document about kind of risk management and sign policy and so on. So I forwarded that to staff to let them have a look at that because I think it's something that we can jump off without doing a whole lot of extra work on our end to be able to fall under their umbrella, especially with the signage and that type of thing. So there's some good information out there that we can help to move this forward. So that's sort of where all this is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson, and I just acknowledge that you are the council rep on this committee. On Thursday of last week, the Grey County Committee, the whole addressed a report dealing with trails, and I hope there's some synergy between Grey County and the Trails Committee. So that's an exciting opportunity there. So thank you for all of that update. We will get to these recommendations shortly. But what I want to ask Council, is there anything with regard to these minutes, save and except the 2 items that have the recommendations following? I'm not seeing anything. So thank you for that report. Clerk Scharbeck, to the first recommendation, please.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. The recommendation is that the West Grey Trails Committee recommends that Council approves the purchase of 5 gates to be installed along the section of trail between Riverside Park and Douglas Street.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Shea. Is there a seconder? Councillor Townsend. Any comments with respect to this motion at hand, beginning with Councillor Townsend, then Councillor Hergert?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I'm just wondering if there is a budget for these things, and just to make sure that we're staying on top of that since we were tight during the budget process. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. Director of Finance and Treasurer, Director Mighton, could you please respond?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. The 2022 budget does not have any dollars allocated for trails.
Further, Councillor? Thank you very much, Councillor Hergert, then.
Might I let Councillor Hutchison reply first?
Okay, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I believe there was $5,000 budget line for trails. Was there not in our last budget?
In 2021, there was, yes.
Okay, but that never got used, right? So that could be a carryover?
If council wants to transfer that to reserve at year end, yeah, for 2021.
Okay, and if I may, just further with budget, so there would be possibly some funds maybe in development charges or the parks dedication fees that that we collect through planning, correct? Like it wouldn't have to be a new budget item.
I don't believe development charges. I'd have to look and see if it was any of the projects that were associated with growth related. But I don't recall anything for trails, but I'd have to double check on the development charges. Parkland Council could approve withdrawing funds from the Parkland Dedication Fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Herger.
To Director Mighton, how much money is in the Parkland Dedication Fund that would be available?
Director, please.
Give me a minute and I will look that up.
Okay, great. In the interim, might I ask a question to
Yes.
our CAO? Since there's a nominal budget from 2021 that we would have to reallocate, what is staff's ability to, I mean, somebody's got to install these. It's one thing to buy them, but do we have staff time to get this done? When would we envision staff may have an opportunity?
Madam CAO, please.
Through Mayor Robinson, thank you, Councillor Hergert, for the question. I know our interim director has had conversations with the Public Works Supervisor, so perhaps we could go to him and he can explain what this would take in the way of resourcing. Thank you.
Very good idea. Thank you very much. Director Glazier, who is our Director of Infrastructure and Public Works, please respond and thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the just for everybody's edification, the cost of the gates, Councillor Hutchison, and I'm not trying to be pull this project down in any way, but we did install gates when I was here last time near the sewage treatment plant, and these gates are not fixed. They have to be able to swing to allow maintenance equipment to access the trail, correct? Those gates, when we put them in at that time, I believe the cost per gate was $1,800, and they're not cheap. And because of the special, they're galvanized, and they have to have swing posts on them, so that the yeah. So I don't know what the cost of them are now. I would imagine they've gone up in price, but we can install the gates. I don't think that adding the gravel and things, or the stone dust or whatever, is going to be able to be accomplished by our staff. We're really struggling with limited staff in Durham area. So, but we can assist with the post. I think that's eligible, but I just want council to be aware, and you be aware, that the cost of those gates are not that cheap. So I leave it council.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to interject for this moment. There may be an opportunity to connect with Grey County through trails. So I'm wondering if council may be interested in that. There may be some synergies in connecting with the trails staff at Grey County. Back to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, so just a couple things. I did have a price on the gates through, I believe the Steve Earhart did price them at $1,076 plus tax. So they're a little bit less than Director, what you were saying there. But yeah, then there would be the cost of installing them. So my thoughts on this would be, I would like to get more detail in terms of what the total cost would be, if like given the public works involvement sort of thing. And I think if we did go ahead and install the gates, I would see it as we install them, but not necessarily close it off, because I'd like to do a little public awareness thing in terms of how the changes may be in terms of motorized vehicles and that type of thing. And I think this year with homecoming, we can do some, maybe set up a little booth and promote the trail and talk about how we're making some changes and the upgrades. I think that would be a way of getting it done. But anyways, yeah, so some more details on the cost, that would be something that I'd like to bring back to the council. As far as the stone dust, I was hoping that if we can purchase the stone dust, that I can get some in-kind, a skid steer in kind by one of our local builders to help surface that up. And that's sort of what we did before when we did that job, was we brought in someone who volunteered some machine time. So I would look into that before we finalize that too.
Okay, thank you for that, and appreciate it. But we're going to stay focused right now on the first motion. Is there any other comments from members of council? I'm still with Councillor Hergert and Councillor Shea.
So I have some concerns. you know, I know that we want to do trails. This has been ongoing. It feels like the committee is separate and apart from our staff here. It seems like it's separate and apart from staff at the county level. I don't see the integration, the focus for one area at a time. You know, Councillor Hutchison, respectfully, if you were asking for one gate and some stone dust at one particular area, it would be more focused in my mind. We could start in one place and then be able to fan the project out. Right now, it seems like we're starting with all the best, you know, the heart in it, but we don't have money allocated for this year, which we could manage. We could find a way if we needed to, but it also doesn't really sound like staff have time for this right now. To me, I see this as a project that's not when bridges and roads are a project, but more in the off season, the shoulder seasons of getting some signage put up and stuff like that. So I don't know if the timing is right for me. I don't see that we have staff or money or so on to do this. And I appreciate the idea that that Councillor Hutchison, you've gotten members of the public organized, you've reached out to people that are willing to donate, but it just doesn't seem like we're at the right level of coordination or the right steps, first, second, third. So I would like to be supportive. I just don't see that we're going to have staff to put in a sign or money to buy the gates there. I was curious also, are the gates like a standardized gate that every other municipality is going to have? Is that what trail gates are? Okay. I would like to see that we could focus on one part of the trails project at a time, but also having the coordinated effort of staff and money to make it actually work. So I'll leave my comments there.
Thank you. And I just want to interject at this time that I see the synergy that is already taking place and continues to take place between Councillor Hutchinson and the West Grey Trails Committee and the information and staff at Grey County. So I want to make that clear that I feel that is taking place. And I appreciate your efforts, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Shea, you are on deck now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So my first question was, you were talking, Mayor, about some possible synergy around these projects at the county. How would we best follow up and follow through on that synergy?
I think the information can be put forward to the Trails Committee, whether there's a staff person that's able to connect with the committee and attend. So I see that the trail is, there's a specific trail that is designed. I think it goes from Dundalk to Owen Sound, but I'm suggesting that there may be some, you know, potential to look at purchasing power or potential connect in the future. So I didn't want to leave out Grey County's really great trail work with what's going on with West Grey's Trails Advisory Committee and all the great work that's going on there. So I think that that is something that could be done. I've already spoken with Councillor Hutchinson about that, but thanks for your interest.
So, great, thank you. So about the focus for this request, my understanding is that the committee has a lot of ambition and wants to do a lot of things over the next several years to improve the trails in West Grey, starting with a loop in Durham, and that this is a very narrow, focused, specific request out of a long list of things. So this was just a let's get started on doing job one. So I'm supportive of this because I do think it's a modest request. If the budget is the issue, if we've got $5,000 that we could carry over from 2021, and if $5,000 doesn't buy 5 gates, then maybe this would be reduced to 3 or 2 or whatever, just to get the project started. So I'm going to support this in principle. I think the details of whether it's 5 or what style and where the budget's going to come from would have to be worked out as we move forward. But I think we should get the initiative started. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking for other members. I'll go to Deputy Mayor and then back to you, Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Just through you to Councillor Hutchinson, it'd probably be worth your while, Councillor Hutchinson, to reach out to the county Parks Committee, because I know there was some extensive conversation on, and the gates that they want to replace, they were almost like a single swing. They need to go to a double. there may be an opportunity there because they are going to replace them. And again, they're all galvanized. It's brand new, so maybe, or not brand new, but it's certainly in excellent condition. But there might be an opportunity there to get a discount, or maybe a little charity, if you will, from Grey County on some of the gates they're going to replace. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go, Councillor Hutchinson, I'm going to go to first-time speaker, Councillor Hamilton, and then to you. Thank you very much for your patience. Councillor Hamilton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you to the committee for the ambition and heart and energy that's going into this project. And I think what the piece that's missing for me is that professional feedback from our staff and having some of those finer, well, important details, budget, even the proposed placement of the gates. Is that the right place? The person power that we need to put those gates in. Is this something that we can achieve this year, or is this something that becomes a budget request for next year? And so I would have more comfort in both these recommendations. I know we're speaking of one right now, but having that, giving staff the time to report back, we're kind of asking them to scramble to estimate prices at this point. So I'd have more comfort in a staff report and recommendation. But perhaps I'd also just like to check in with her CAO if she has, if council and principal supports this, what would be some good next steps, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Over to you, Madam CAO.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, to council, thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for the question. Council, you will recall that in the budget, we did approve the hiring of an environmental and capital projects officer for a September start. My goal was that position would actually take the lead on trail development, which would include the very things that Councillor Hamilton and to your point, Councillor Hergert, you identified. We kind of have to have a plan. We're going about this with a lot of enthusiasm, but I don't really see a very strategic approach here. So that position will be instrumental in coordinating and organizing all of these opportunities and ideas. I don't think we need to lose sight of the need. And if council wants to approve this, we can do the work to make it happen, but it won't be happening right away. As you know, and Councillor Hutchinson, you're aware, even when from the Gardens and Green Space Committee, there's a number of projects that they're needing help from Public Works, and those projects aren't moving along very quickly either. That department is strapped, and there's great ideas, but there's just not the timeliness that we can produce or provide to these projects. We do have a staff person coming on board in a few months, but it's the boots on the ground that are really struggling. So to approve these recommendations is one thing. To expect immediate delivery, I'm afraid I don't think we can do that.
Back to you, Councillor Hamilton. Is there anything further?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable approving these recommendations at this time without the staff resourcing in place and the budget in place. Just at this time, Councillor Hutchinson. We don't. Do we have a recommendation? Do we have we do have a mover and seconder? Okay, let me just.
Councillor Hamilton, yes, we have a motion on the floor. However, I see that Madam CAO has indicated she just wants to respond. I'll go to her and then back to you, and then over to Councillor Hutchinson. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I do want council to understand that staff are supportive of anything that enhances our community and contributes to wellness and green initiatives. So I don't want to just give the impression that we're saying no. Perhaps the best outcome would be for us to report back. I'd like to check with our insurer to let them know that we are committed to developing a trail network. What does that mean in premiums for next year? We're adding to our inventory. What's that going to mean for ongoing maintenance? I think we really need to take that bit of a strategic angle here. These recommendations are important. This work will need to get done sooner or later. So approving it isn't really the big issue. It's how are we going to deliver?
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So I would have more comfort in turning this recommendation to a staff report that might come, and then perhaps it's not coming in. Perhaps we're waiting for that resourcing of the environmental coordinator. So just a question through you to our clerk. Am I able to amend the current recommendation into a staff report, or any guidance on that, please?
Madam Clerk, please.
That's a good question, Councillor Hamilton. There is It's a recommendation from the committee. So what council does with that is council's resolution. So council may approve their recommendation, they may turn down the recommendation completely, or they may defer the recommendation or refer it to staff, perhaps to bring back at budget time with a fulsome report from the environmental position. It's council's prerogative what you'd like to do with this recommendation or how much of it. So yes, you can amend it as you see fit, Councillor.
Councillor Hamilton?
So Mayor Robinson, I would make an amendment that this recommendation be referred to staff for a staff report.
So Madam Clerk, I will take a seconder on the referral at this time. Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Not this time. I would like to make comment.
Okay, I just will need to get a seconder first, and then I'll come to you for the comment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert. Okay, Clerk Sharbuck, could you read back the amendment, please?
Actually, it's a new motion to refer.
Thank you. That's
And
why I
I'm
kind of struggled
not sure
with
it's
the word.
debatable.
Yeah.
I was just going to check that. Moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Hergert that this recommendation, be referred to staff for a report to council.
Thank you for that. And before we go to Councillor Hutchinson, I just would like confirmation that it is debatable. And I'm just looking at page 25. If you could just provide some guidance with regard to motion to refer. Thank you, Clerk Sharbuck. Yes?
Isn't there already a motion on the floor?
Clerk Sharbuck, this is a motion to refer. And could you please respond in terms of the process as the councillor has a question of clarity?
Through Mayor Robinson, a motion to refer is like a motion to defer or a motion to amend. So it can be the resolution of this motion on the floor. So instead of carried or defeated, it would be referred to committee. So a motion to refer and any amendment to it is debatable, and it shall include the name of the committee or official to whom the motion or amendment is being referred, which we have in there, it is staff, and the terms upon which it is to be referred and the time period, if any, on which the matter is to be returned. So I don't know if you need to clarify that in the referral motion, or if it's understood that it will be a staff report when there's staff able to report. I guess that's up to the CAO if you need that clear.
Madam CAO, do you need that clarity? And then I'll go back to Councillor Hamilton based on your response.
Through Mayor Robinson, if council is able to provide that, I think it would be helpful for the committee as well as staff if we could nail down expectations on when we're reporting back.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Hamilton, then, for any consideration.
Is fall clear or cute? Or yeah, or maybe a fancy staff language for that. But the idea would be after your environmental coordinator comes in, so perhaps October. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I'll wait for Clerk Sharbuck to read back the motion. Thank you.
So through you, Mayor, that this recommendation be referred to staff for a report to council in October 2022.
Thank you, and I'm asking for a recorded vote on this. So it is debatable. Over to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Well, I'm a little frustrated, as you can see. I've been working on this for 8 years now. And one of the things that that I was told before we can move ahead on trails, we have to have a committee. So I got a committee. I got 9 people that are keen to do some work. And we're meeting and they're making recommendations. Okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. I've said right from the start that one of the issues that we have with our trails is that people use our trails. We as a council don't admit that we have trails, but yet we have trails. And if there's any liability issue, it's going to come back to us regardless. So I've been doing a lot of work. I've already talked to the county. I've made contact with the county. The counties, I've read their reports. I know where they are. I've suggested it comes back. Some of our staff have already been involved with meeting with the county in terms of this. So I would like to move forward. If we wait to the fall. So what do my committee do? I have a committee that want to do some work, and we sit there and I say, well, we can't do anything. We make recommendations, and they put it back to the staff, and the staff say we don't have staff, and therefore it goes to the fall, and we can't do anything. So I might as well just fold this committee and leave it till next term, whoever's on council, and let them look after it. I'm really frustrated that, I can't do anything with this committee to move forward. So fine, you can push it off to the fall, but meanwhile, all the work I've done so far is just up in the air, and I'll just tell our committee that we're on hold until next election. Thank you.
Is there any further questions or comments, Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to make a different amendment to the motion, and that was to actually approve the activity using the funds from reserve that were for 2021 allocated for trails, and the rest of what the CEO and I've heard in other discussions is operational. I'm not sure why we need a report if we basically said we'll authorize up to the $5,000 from reserve, and the committee will continue to work with staff, make it happen, whatever they can make happen. We've given opportunities to contact county, and it sounds like Councillor Hutchinson is on top of that already. But maybe there's a couple of other ideas you can pursue, and maybe even get something free gratis, or at least less expensive. So if within that 5,000 and whatever staff can do, when they can do it, that's up to them. And I think that at least allows the committee to move forward. I agree with Councillor Hutchinson. We've talked about this before. And also, I'm not sure why it has to come back to council for operational considerations. That's the way I was looking at it. So I won't be supporting the referral. I'd rather see that work between the committee and staff as appropriate. And if that means it is to the fall, it is to the fall. But if an opportunity comes up, why wouldn't we move forward? Anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say, just a comment from the chair, I will be supporting the original motion. All right, Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Mayor. I too will be supporting the original motion, as I indicated before, and not the referral. And I think for the reasons that Councillor Townsend made, that all we're doing is authorizing this to happen at some point, and that point will be determined by staff and the committee. And I seem to recall that when we did the stairs at the Ball Diamond, I think that we approved that and it happened the following year. So, sometimes projects stretch over a couple of years. If we approve the original motion, this just goes on to the to-do list. Maybe it's number 30th on the to-do list. So I don't think we're sensitive to staff's the limited resources that we have. But I think we should just get this on the list so that we can be making headway with trails, even on paper. So I'm not going to support the referral, but I will support the original motion. Thank you.
So we have the referral on deck for voting. I'm just, Councillor, I'd like to wrap this up. Councillor Herger. Go ahead.
Do I have 5 minutes?
No, you do not.
Okay, how much
have,
time maybe?
You have 3 minutes.
3, perfect, thank you. So it appears to me, just like I've already mentioned, is that there's a lot of heart and a lot of spirit in this Trails Committee. It also appears to me that for 8 years, Council has not put a staff person in that place until September of this fall. So yes, we have approved it in a previous budget. So that puts an awkward, nuance to the situation of, do we have money? So even assuming that we have money, who will be the staff that install these properly so the liability is minimized for the path forward? I think the strategy part is what we have to take the time and get it right. If we just put in a gate and have never looked at, the requirements, or I know there's some case law, insurance, settlement stuff, we have to really be careful about this. So I am not trying to diminish the enthusiasm on that Trails Committee, you said, you have started it up from scratch. I haven't seen any of like the simple things though. Maybe I just haven't seen them, like GIS mapping. I know there was some discussion last meeting about that. So those simple things that don't cost money, that reduce our liability, those are the things I would look for initially out of the committee. But it's not my committee, and I do appreciate you sitting on that committee and taking the lead. It does seem like there is a plan to get gates. But what do those gates mean if we don't have signage? The education piece is nice if it's a one-day event, but if we're not there to man the post, let's say, how will all the other people know if they can have a baby stroller or a dirt bike rolling past them on the trail? Like, all of that stuff is important, and not one piece is more important than the other. So I feel like without a strategy, it seems a little difficult to move forward in a way that we have synergy. There's a lot of talk about synergy, but if there's no plan, then, we're just information sharing. So again, it just seems like we don't have the organization to, the staff members to put up the signs, to go out and look at the trails to make sure they're maintained. I think we're leaving a big open gaping hole if we do not just stick to the strategy. So I do like the idea of Councillor Hamilton bringing it back in October. That gives 2 months for a new staff person. It is the shoulder season of public works then. Maybe there's an opportunity for those gates to get put up in the fall, but without having a strategy and having our insurance provider on board, all of those things, I think it's too risky to just approve the gates. It's just one thing that's a start, but I know there's so much energy and enthusiasm that once you start something, it's like, yeah, but the flower beds look good. And then where does it fit into asset management? This is something that will need to be maintained, and somebody's going to have to go out and paint the thing, every so often. It just has to be done. So at this time, I am not prepared to move forward on it without the strategic plan.
Thank you, Councillor Hergert. Could you please wrap up? I know you were going for your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Clerk Sharbeck, I would like a recorded vote on this. Just checking if there's any further speakers. Clerk Sharbeck, over to you, please.
Okay, through you, Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Hergert, that the recommendation of the West Grey Trails Committee to purchase 5 gates for trails be referred to staff for a report back to Council in October 2022. Councillor Shea, how do you vote?
No.
Mayor Robinson?
Not in favor.
Councillor Hutchinson?
No.
Councillor Hergert?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson?
Not in favor.
Councillor Hamilton?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Not in favor.
And the motion to refer this item has been defeated, so we are back to the motion, the original main motion, moved by Councillor Shea and seconded by Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, even to myself, I would like a recorded vote on that. I do see an indication of Councillor Townsend. You have your hand up.
I do. Thank you very much. I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion, and I have some wording, if you don't mind, Madam Clerk, that I go through it. And I'm suggesting that we add to the end of the motion that exists to a maximum cost of $5,000 to be taken from reserve with the work to be coordinated with staff. That's it. That's it.
We'll wait for Clerk Sharbeck to read back the motion, and then I'll look for a seconder. While that's being done, we'll just have to wait, Madam CAO. I'll come to you right after determining if there's a seconder. Unless it's with regard to the language of the motion. Oh, please go ahead then.
I was just pondering I'm pondering, Madam Mayor, when I should jump in. Councillor Townsend, would you consider another tweak to say the purchase of up to 5 gates? Because I'm not sure that we can get 5 gates for $5,000.
Fine with that. That's a good point.
Thank you for the input.
So, Councillor Townsend, just let me know if I've got this right, that the main motion regarding the recommendation of the West Grey Trails Committee to purchase 5 gates for trails be amended by adding up to 5 gates and with a maximum cost of $5,000 to be taken from reserves, with the work to be coordinated with staff.
Okay. So Councillor Townsend has just indicated yes. Is there a seconder for this amendment? And that is Councillor Hutchinson. Okay, any comments on this amendment? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So I appreciate the clarity of up to $5,000. My concern lies in the decisions we make at budget time and how that then impacts us throughout the year. And so at budget time, this council had a motion before it to not even hire an environmental capital project coordinator. It was narrowly passed. And that's the person that we're now relying on, who's not starting until the fall, because that's how we approached it to fit it into our budget. So council makes these decisions at budget about resourcing, and these are the impacts we bump up against throughout the year. And so I don't have comfort in starting this project until we have that resource person in place. I do think, you know, our committees are advisory committees, and a lot of our, a lot of the committees, these projects take time to unfold. Often you're waiting for the next budget cycle. And so there's a lot of support here at council. I just want to ensure we have the people and the finances in place to support. So at this time, I can't support this motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, so I hear what some of the councillors are saying, and there's no way that we're going to go ahead and put money and time into bring our trails up to speed without going through the proper procedures, knowing the legal aspects of it a whole bit. I've done lots of research and read lots of things. I've been working with the staff to a certain extent. I've worked with our Public Works and our Conservation Authority met with them, and we talked about where things could go. So people are on board. I'm not going. All I want to do is sort of get started. We've already asked for a report. When I first brought our first meeting, we brought back recommendations about a risk management strategy and so on, and that was put back to the staff to come up with a report, and that's fine. I want to see that done. That's why we recommended it. It's just the time, and we just want to get going on some things by putting a bit of stone dust down to relieve some of the liability. Putting up the gates, we don't even need to close the gates. Just get them in place. I want to do some public awareness. I'll let people know what we're doing here, and then the signage has to come along with it. You're right, Councillor Hergert. Signage is very important, and ideally, I would like to do that at the same time, but we don't have the funds. So we're just trying to do whatever we can to get things rolling, to make it safer. And meanwhile, we wait for whatever staff is going to jump on board and lead the way. That's great, but that's going to be 6 months down the road or whatever. We're just trying to get something done in the meantime because the trails are being used right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, members? I'm not seeing anything further. Clerk Sharback to the motion for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, moved by Councillor Townsend and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, that the main motion regarding the recommendation of the West Grey Trails Committee to purchase gates be amended by adding up to 5 gates and with a maximum cost of $5,000 to be taken from reserves, with the work to be coordinated with staff. Councillor Hergert, how do you vote?
Can I ask for a question of clarity, which I apologize?
Yeah.
The reserve money, what reserve money will that be coming from? Like Parks reserve money or the 2021 overage general levy reserve money?
I would ask Director Mighton for clarity on that, and if we could identify it in the motion, it would add clarity.
Thank you.
Councillor
Okay.
Hergert, if you're okay with that, Councillor Townsend.
Director Mighton, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I would suggest it's the unspent 2021 Trails Reserve funds.
So we'll build that into the motion, and if the clerk could read that back. Thank you. Councillor Townsend, you're fine with that? And Councillor Hutchinson as the seconder, you're fine with the identification of the reserve title? All right, thank you. We'll wait for Madam Clerk.
So through Mayor Robinson, I've added $5,000 to be taken from the unspent 2021 Trails Reserve Fund, with the work to be coordinated with staff.
Any other clarity, Councillor?
Point of order?
Oh, yes.
I think the clerk indicated that the deputy mayor was the seconder. And you just said.
It was, but it is Councillor Hutchinson.
Thanks for that, Councillor Shea. Actually, I did have deputy mayor.
Thank you. It is Councillor Hutchinson. Okay. Thank you for that point of order. Anything further, Councillor Hergert? Nope. All right. All right. So could you please read it again, and then for the recorded vote, it's over to you, Madam Clerk.
That the main motion regarding the recommendation of the West Grey Trails Committee to purchase gates be amended by adding up to 5 gates and with a maximum cost of $5,000 to be taken from the unspent 2021 Trails Reserve Fund, with the work to be coordinated with staff. Councillor Hergert, how do you vote?
No.
Mayor Robinson?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson?
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton?
No.
Councillor Hutchinson?
In favor.
Councillor Shea?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
In favor.
And that amendment is carried. So we're back to the main motion.
Please proceed, and that is a recorded vote. Thank you very much.
Through Mayor, the main motion moved by Councillor Shea and seconded by Councillor Townsend is that the West Grey Trails Committee recommends that council approves the purchase of up to 5 gates. Sorry, I lost my other motion. With a maximum cost of $5,000 to be taken from the unspent 2021 Trails Reserve Fund, with the work to be coordinated with staff to be installed along the section of trail between Riverside Park and Douglas Street. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, how do you vote?
In favor.
Councillor Shea?
Yes.
Councillor Hutchinson?
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton?
No.
Councillor Townsend?
In favor.
Mayor Robinson?
In favor.
Councillor Hergert?
Councillor Hergert, no.
That motion is carried.
Thank you. We're moving on now to the next recommendation dealing with the stone dust. Clerk Shepherd, could you please read the recommendation at hand?
Through Mayor, the recommendation is that the West Grey Trails Committee recommends that council approves the purchase of stone dust to fix existing trail from the lower dam to Park Street.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, is there a seconder? Councillor Hutchinson, I can't see. There's a line pop-up box. Are you seconding the motion, just for clarity
Yes.
of everyone?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson seconds. Any comments with regard to the motion, beginning with Councillor Townsend? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering why we even have the motion. If I read the minutes and can read between the lines, you're talking about maintenance of a trail that is no longer level, could present an issue. And I'm wondering why staff wouldn't deal with that from a liability maintenance perspective. And that should come out of just a regular maintenance funding. So I actually did consider whether this should be in the previous motion to do it, but then to me, it's strictly maintenance. It's not something that they're looking to upgrade, if you will, because it talks about leveling and doing the maintenance that hasn't been done. So I would propose that, subject to comments from staff, that we wouldn't need the motion. Thank you.
Madam CIO, could you please comment?
Through you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you, Councillor Townsend. I'd like our director to speak a little bit about what work would be involved, because he has spoken with Mr. Earhart on that particular patch of the trail.
Very good. Director
Thank you.
Glazier, our Director of Infrastructure and Public Works, please respond and thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Townsend, it's was brought to my attention, Steve, I discussed this issue with Steve, Mr. Earhart this morning, and Councillor Hutchinson, I'd like you to confirm this. He indicated there was approximately 4 blocks that were requiring application of stone dust. Is that correct? Like in length, the length of what you're wanting to capture is approximately 4 block lengths, approximately.
I guess equates to the street blocks. Yeah, that would roughly from Lower Dam to Park Street is what we're looking at.
Okay, Director, could you please direct those questions through me? And please continue with your response. That's fine. Please continue.
I apologize, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to, again, go back to where the money's going to come from. And unfortunately, the budget was already set prior to my arrival. I did not know any of these things at that point in time. Regardless, I'm looking at, again, it's not a matter of, it's the timing that is a concern, is when this is requiring to be done and scheduling it into the workloads that we currently have. I hope council would allow us to be flexible. If this is a direction that council wishes to go, that we would fit it into our schedule as it fits. And again, money-wise, I haven't seen the trail. I would have to calculate out the actual length and determine approximate volume and come up with an estimated amount of what it would take to complete that work. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. If council would allow, I would like to possibly bring back a cost. If council wishes, I could bring back a cost to the next council meeting for their recommendation on what they want to proceed with.
Thank you. Just a response from Councillor Hutchinson and then back to Councillor Townsend, who had the original question. Just to respond, Councillor Hutchinson.
Right. So would it be feasible to lump this in with the $5,000 that we're working off from last year's budget? I priced the stone dust and it's about $400, 400, 500 with a load of stone dust plus delivery. So then it becomes of machine time and what man hour times to get it done. So could we look at maybe including this under the $5,000 that we have to work with? I foresee that we might be able to get 3 gates and a bit of stone dust, and maybe we can only do a section of the trail that needs it worst within this summer or something. So just give some flexibility to allow us to resolve some issues within the $5,000 budget, including stone dust along with the gates. So maybe that's the way we want to go with this. Thanks.
Well, Councillor Hutchinson, we just had quite a robust discussion and motions dealing with the resolution dealing with the gates already, but we'll deal with the motion at hand that we have before us that's been duly moved and seconded. Councillor Townsend, is there anything further? You have the mic.
Yes, please. I'd just like to follow up through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Glazer. If there was no Trails Committee and someone that was using the trail came to you and said, it's uneven, people can stumble, et cetera, you would do the work, do the analysis, and deal with it appropriately, whether it be today, next month, and you'd worry about how you did the maintenance, correct?
Director Glazer. Director Glazer, pardon me, I think you'll need to turn your mic on.
Apologize again. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Townsend, you are correct. If there was an identified deficiency, I would have staff review it and look at the severity of the deficiency and take action as required.
Anything further?
Yeah, just one last comment. So I'm suggesting that that's the situation you have based on what I've read. Councillor Hutchinson can confirm that, and therefore why confuse the cost? I realize that it may mean you're trading off in your maintenance world, but you would do that anyway in a regular kind of situation. So I'd rather leave it with maintenance, to be honest, to deal with it, assuming we understand it, and hopefully Councillor Hutchinson can confirm that is a maintenance issue, not an upgrade issue. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Herbert?
Yes, so as this may be viewed as a maintenance issue, how much money do we have in the budget for 2022 for maintenance of trails?
Director Maitin.
We don't have any money in the 2022 budget for trails.
Which is why we went to reserve for the last bit, right? So we have no money set aside for that. Is asset management, are trails included in asset management?
Yes, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Our first asset management is just roads, bridges, water, and sewer. That needs to be updated by July 1st of 2022. The next round of updates will include the balance of assets, which would include anything in parks, recreation, and that type of thing.
And when is the balance of that asset management plan required by the province?
The date moved out, I want to say 2024 is in my head, but I'd have to confirm.
Do you think that this would be a budget line that we should entertain in the future to have money available for maintenance of our trails?
Director Maitin.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if council is going to adopt a formal trail network, then yes, you would need to allocate some funds for ongoing maintenance.
Thank you.
Members of council, are there any further questions? Oh, Madam CIO, before I go to the vote, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So to Councillor Townsend's question as to why this recommendation is before you, I think it's most appropriate that it's here for the very fact that we don't have budget. So if you're asking us to purchase additional stone dust, we would need to identify where we're going to pull those funds from, or you're going to need to direct us to take it from our operating, and that means that we would be doing something different. So what are we stopping to replace it with this? So there's two ways to manage this. I agree if there's a risk here and we want to take care of it, then we should, but we need to know, are we taking money from somewhere, or are we taking a project swap to do this work?
Thank you. Anything further? Clerk Sharbeck to the motion, please.
Through you, Mayor. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson and seconded by Doug Hutchinson. The West Grey Trails Committee recommends that council approves the purchase of stone dust to fix existing trail from the lower dam to Park Street.
All those in favor indicate, before I go for the vote, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To address the CEO's gap, if you will, and what we're doing, could we also suggest that we add with the funds to be taken from the Parkland Education Reserve or fund?
Clerk Sharbeck, do we need an amendment to that, or can that be folded in at this time, please?
I think I would call this providing clarity to the original main motion. And I'm wondering, with funds up to a dollar amount, so that there's some clarity, because the treasurer can't just move funds out of reserves without some direction from council.
Right.
Yes, I would like to have, based on what Councillor Hutchinson said, we could say up to $1,000, and then we'll deal with if there's an issue at the time. Sorry, it was on or off? Sorry. Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're just balancing the mics. That's a-okay. I'm just waiting now for Clerk Sharbeck to read that back. I will look to the mover and seconder for that clarity and then call the vote. Thank you.
Through Mayor Robinson, moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson and seconded by Doug Hutchinson, with some clarity in there that you'll both have to be okay with. That the West Great Trails Committee recommends that Council approves the purchase of stone dust to fix existing trail from the lower dam to Park Street with funds up to $1,000 to be taken from the unspent 2021 Trails Reserves.
Deputy Mayor, as a mover, are you fine with the language?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson, as the seconder, are you fine with the language? Okay, I get a thumbs up on screen. Okay, any other questions of Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was concerned about the 5,000 that would be used for gates, which is why I suggested the Parkland Dedication Fund. That was my recommendation, rather than to take it from the 5,000 as well.
What?
So yeah, I didn't say from the unspent 2021. I said from the Parkland Dedication Fund.
Clerk Sharbeck.
Sorry?
I think I'm confused. That's what we went to the treasurer for, was to name where we could take the money from. So the resolution that we passed for the $5,000 does say the 2021 unspent Trails Reserve. It doesn't say Parkland Dedication Fee. But after this vote, it could be like reconsidered. If you want to take it from Parkland Dedication.
No.
No,
there's two different, excuse me, through you, Madam Mayor. There's two different discussions. We've already passed taking the cost of the gates from the 2021. For this one, I was proposing it come from the Parkland Dedication. So this one is different. I'm not adjusting the original one. I'm just saying this needs to come from a different
Just the
source.
assignment of where the funding is being allocated.
And I believe the
from.
treasurer said that was a source that we could use. So
We'll just have it read again,
Yep,
and that's
yep.
just fine.
So with funds up to $1,000 to be taken from Parkland Dedication Funds.
With that, Deputy Mayor, you're fine with that. And as the seconder, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yes.
You're fine with that. So that takes care of your inquiry. Over to you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Can I just follow up on a detail that Councillor Hutchinson had shared about people wanting to donate time or seeking people to donate time with their machines to assist with the trail. And I know it's so great to get that community involvement, and we have a history of that kind of involvement, but I'm also aware that times change in terms of liability concerns. And so I just wanted to touch base with our CEO to see if that kind of donating of time is something that can still be done at these times. Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Madam CIO.
Through Mayor Robinson, Councillor Hamilton, thank you for that question. I do have concerns. It makes me a little uneasy when people step up to do work that would require specific training or supervision. You're right, times are different, and we need to protect our volunteers, especially when they're working on our property. So I would need to know a little bit more about what who's stepping up, and how we manage safe working alone, all of those things. And this isn't the only committee that's got a passionate group of folks that would like to step in and get going. So I think as a corporation, we need to really come up with a volunteer management strategy and get people trained up and working safely and doing everything legit.
Councillor Hamilton, anything further?
No, thank you. I appreciate that clarity, and I appreciate the enthusiasm too, and that okay, thank you for that. And so with this, I would have more comfort if this motion was The committee recognizes some concerns with the trails or some deficiencies that they'd like to bring to the attention of staff, and that staff report back. And then staff would say, here's the resourcing, here's the budget, here's how we're going to do it, here's how volunteers could participate. Here's where we find the money. Hey, maybe we've got some extra money in a public works budget that's going to not require quite as much funding, that kind of thing. So I just feel like it's a bit of a shot in the dark right now, trying to pull these details together with this one motion. So I can't support the motion as it is. Again, I would be seeking a staff report instead. Thank you.
Councillor Hergert.
Yes, I'm looking for the answer from our director about how much money is in the parkland dedication.
Director Mike.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. We're just over $35,000.
35,000, and that can be used for anything to do with parks. It could be signage, it could be stone dust, it could be any of that.
Yes, the parameters aren't specific within the parkland dedication fee as far as itemizing different items like that.
I would just like to share that I read an article out of Guelph this week about Enough with the Parks. We get money donating parkland dedication, but people will have to pay to continue to maintain the parks. We have a lot of people that are paying a great deal of money to have properties up here, increase in property tax. Not everybody has time to enjoy these things. So I just want us to be mindful that on a side road that has no bridge in it, people could also go on the roadway, right? There are places that people could walk and be out in nature that don't actually cost more resources in a specific department, but instead would be maintaining gravel on a road. So just keep that in mind, that not everybody is able to use the parks for various reasons. Some people are out just really trying to pay their tax money with working.
Anything further? Clerk Sharbuck, could you read the motion, then I'll call the vote. Thank you. We've had a lot of discussion.
Through you, Mayor, moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson and seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. The West Grey Trails Committee recommends that Council approves the purchase of stone dust to fix existing trail from the lower dam to Park Street with funds up to $1,000 to be taken from the Parkland Dedication Fund.
All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. All those opposed? Motion is carried 4-3. We're now going to deal with the balance of the committee and board reports. 9.2, Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transit Board, January 28, 2022 minutes. Any comments? The 9.3, Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transit Board, February 18, 2022 minutes. Comments? 9.4, Saugeen Mobility Regional Transit Board, March 22nd, 2022 minutes. Any comments? 9.5, Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transit Board, March 29th, 2022 minutes. 9.6, Garden and Green Spaces Advisory Committee, April 6, 2022 minutes. Save and accept the recommendations that will follow. Any comment? All right, Clerk Sharbuck, to the recommendation dealing with the first recommendation from the Gardens and Green Spaces Advisory Committee, please.
Through Mayor, the recommendation is that Council supports the request from the Gardens and Green Spaces Advisory Committee to enable volunteers to assess and prioritize gardens and create improvement plans for discussion with the Chief Administrative Officer.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, and I see Councillor Hergert as the seconder. I have to watch with the partition screens to ensure that I'm seeing the raised hands. We have mover and seconder. Is there any comments with regard to this motion? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, just that, again, this is a very active group that wants to get their hands into the gardens and do some work. So I think it's a good idea if we come up with some way of, registering. We haven't done this in the past, I don't believe, but register our volunteers There was discussion about police checks and which would be free, I believe, through our local police department. But basically, this group wants to get going on the gardens and make it look nice for the homecoming this summer. So they're keen to get going, and hopefully we can support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments with regard to the motion? Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I think I'm just seeking clarity on what the recommendation is asking for. So, so perhaps one of a garden space advisory council reps could assist me. So is the committee asking that they have the ability to engage with their CAO as the committee creates a garden plan and prioritizes gardens? Like, this is about the committee having access to the CEO for conversation about developing a plan. Is that how this reads?
So we'll go to Councillor Hutchinson and then over to Councillor Shea if he has any comments, as both council members are the appointed committee members. Councillor Hutchinson.
Right. So what they're saying is that they want to make a plan. They're doing. We've got an inventory, sort of how to attack what gardens. The gardens just need a lot of tender loving care, sort of thing, and some work done on them. So coordinating with the public works, they're making a plan that they're going to go out and tackle some of these flower beds to bring them up to snuff and do some planting and whatnot. So just help with public works to get on top of some of the gardens is basically what they're trying to do, because obviously some of them got overrun over the last few years.
Thank you. Councillor Shea, nothing further to add? Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you, Councillor Hutchison, for that explanation. Could I just ask staff if how they read the recommendation that as Councillor Hutchison has summarized it? Do you see that direction here in the recommendation? Because I don't see the wording matching what you just shared with us, Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam CAO, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hamilton, I'm aligned with you. When I read this recommendation, I mean, that this advisory committee was created in part to identify and set a priority for gardens that we're keeping, green spaces that we're converting to something different, and other spaces that we probably don't want to have in our inventory. That was what I'm taking from this motion, is they want to get that work formalized, and they would bring that work plan to the CAO, and then I would have the opportunity to speak with staff and bring back to council to say, here's what the committee is hoping to achieve, and here's how staff could accommodate, and then council ultimately makes a decision on what gardens get done. I didn't realize that the committee was thinking that they would be out there implementing the garden plan that we have all yet to see.
Thank you. Councillor, are you done, Councillor Hamilton?
Oh, thank you, Mayor Robinson. That's how I read this motion as well, is the committee putting together a draft plan, and then council saying, yes, please talk with our CAO, and it would come back through staff, perhaps then a report on the plan. So thank you for that clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I guess the issue here was that this meeting, there would have been more information and clarity if we had had our last gardens and green spaces meeting, but for some reason the Zoom button didn't get pushed and we didn't have a meeting. Therefore, this inventory and the discussion around this recommendation should have happened last week, but it didn't happen. So now we're meeting, I believe it's tonight or tomorrow, tonight maybe. And so there'll be more clarity come out of this next meeting, which, you know, should have happened before this come to council. So unfortunately, so maybe we just defer this until after our next meeting, so that we can bring back more information. But I know in the meantime, people do want to get going on some gardens as things starts to grow here. So so there should be definitely more clarity, and hopefully that maybe the council would still give the go ahead through the CAO, who hopefully will be at our meeting tonight, or at least some staff representation, that we can get the go ahead to move forward on doing some work.
Thank you.
Based on the plan.
Madam CIO, you look like you want to respond, and I'm pretty sure that would be a good
Thank
thing.
you, Mayor Robinson, the benefit of in-person meetings. So Councillor Hutchinson, just for my clarity, I have seen a draft garden plan. This committee has talked about that a couple of meetings ago, and it was in the minutes. I think it's been deferred. And at every meeting, when I receive the agenda, I provide information to the chair and the council reps so that you have the answers to the questions. So when I saw this motion, I thought that it was really just to finalize the plan, meet with me. We do have a budget for this work. So what is the committee recommending is the starting point? That's really all I thought that this recommendation was looking to do. So if council supported this, then the committee could finalize the plan this evening and meet with me, and then here we go. I wasn't intending on bringing anything back to council that wasn't achievable. If there's something that they want that's beyond our budget, then that comes back to council. But I really thought this was so that when they say prioritize the gardens and create a plan, okay, thank you for your assistance and your advice. We'll take it from here. That's really what I thought they were looking to do with this motion, or sorry, recommendation.
Thank you, Madam CIO, and that's certainly how I'm reading it. Is Councillor Hutchinson, is that something that the committee can address? And I'm also going to go to Councillor Shea with that because you're both on the committee.
Yeah, I agree that so there's going to be a plan, but the only thing that I read in here is that that the volunteers want to begin preliminary work based on this plan. So whenever we say, okay, there's a plan, this is how we're going to tackle it, then the volunteers want to get out there and work. And that's why we talked about a registry, getting the list of people who are working, give them a vest, get a police check, away we go. So yeah, it's all, it's there. It's just a matter of finalizing it. So hopefully we can do that this evening.
Councillor Shea.
Yes, I'd move that we refer this recommendation back to the committee for further clarification, because I don't think it's saying what Councillor Hutchinson is saying. And I think that the CAO is engaged with this committee and that the dialogue can happen. The dialogue is already happening. So I think we just need to have further discussion at the committee, Doug, and then get this work started. So I move we refer this back to the committee.
Thank you. And I will go to Clerk Charback to be able to respond back with the language and confirm with you on it, and then I'll get a seconder. One moment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Moved by Councillor Shea that this recommendation be referred back to the Gardens and Green Spaces Advisory Committee for further clarification.
Okay, Councillor Shea. Is there a seconder for this motion? I'm not seeing Councillor Hutchinson, you are seconding the motion. Any comments on the motion, Councillor Townsend?
Yeah, I'm concerned with sending it back when it sounds like there's quite a bit of discussion already there. We're almost done. I know Homecoming's aware of the activities that are going on and they're concerned that they want this to move forward. If we wait for another meeting, then we're into the middle of May, and so now we start getting into growing periods, and we really do want it to look really good for the end of June, beginning of July homecoming. So if I just heard the CEO say so, I'm assuming through you, Madam Mayor, that the CEO can confirm again that we're in a good place, and it's just a matter of finalizing what's going to happen and move forward. If they can do that tonight, start work tomorrow, I'm exaggerating to prove a point, then we save 2 weeks. And to me, that's critical if you're talking about growing seasons. So anyway, I won't be supporting the referral for that reason. Thank
Madam
you.
CEO, for that clarity.
Through Mayor Robinson, yes, Councillor Townsend, that's my understanding is they just need to finalize the plan and call me and we'll figure out how the work's going to get done. I thought that's where we were. And, when they say they want to assess, I know that they want to do a bit of a walk around and, that's part of how they're going to create the plan. They have to go out and see what we have. So I would welcome this inventory and this improvement plan sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Anything further? Clerk Charback to the, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I agree. If we can do it through this next meeting, I believe they already do have that plan, and that would have come forward in our last meeting, but it's going to be tonight now, so we've already got the cart before the horse. But anyways, I would like to remove my seconding of the deferral if we can do it without having to bring it back to the council.
Okay, so we do not have a seconder for the deferral. Checking if there is one. So the deferral does not have a seconder, Madam Clerk, so it is not there. Is that correct procedurally? Thank you. Main motion, could you please read that and now call the vote? Thank you very much.
Through Mayor, the resolution moved by Councillor Townsend and seconded by Councillor Hergert. The council supports the request from the Gardens and Green Spaces Advisory Committee to enable volunteers to assess and prioritize gardens and create improvement plans for discussion with the Chief Administrative Officer.
All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. There's one final motion with regard to the Gardens and Green Spaces. Clerk Sharbeck to the recommendation.
Through Mayor, the recommendation is that council requests staff report back on the recommendation from the Gardens and Green Spaces Advisory Committee to expand the community gardens program to include several raised beds behind the arena in Ayton.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Shea, any questions with regard to the motion? Councillor Hergert?
So this is an expansion to, it's a potential expansion to the community gardens program. That's what it says here. How much money do we currently provide for raised beds as part of the garden and green space?
Director Martin?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't believe we have any dollars set aside for raised garden beds this year.
Okay, it would just come from the whole of the budget for garden and green space. Is that accurate?
Director.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, part of the parks, grass cutting and that type of thing, but there's nothing specific for. It would need to be offset with to make sure we're still within our flowers and items like that.
Anything further?
I do have a question. If someone, let's say this doesn't fit into the Garden and Green Space Advisory Committee, if some single person, one individual, 10 individuals would like to come forward and have raised beds, is there a way that it would happen or could happen outside of this program, or this is the program that it best suits?
Madam CIO.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, Councillor Hergert, that's a good question. The mandate of this committee has evolved, so this is an appropriate request from this committee. You'll recall originally they started out as just urban beautification. Now they're expanding to look at green spaces in general and gardens. So I see the alignment for sure. If a community group was interested in pioneering a community garden somewhere, I would welcome that conversation because any other options should be explored.
Such as a pumpkin patch or sunflower growth. I mean, there are lots of opportunities. Where do we start and stop this committee, I guess, is my question.
Anything further? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I'm just seeking a little clarity, actually, now I reread it again. But community gardens program to include several raised beds behind. I think there's only one butterfly garden behind the Ayton Arena. This is referring to several. I was wondering if I get some clarity on that, please.
Madam CIO.
Through you, Mayor Robinson. Deputy Mayor, I'm not entirely certain, but I believe that they were looking at areas in addition to the butterfly garden, perhaps repurposing some of the space around the tennis courts or something like that.
Thank you, Madam CEO.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I support community gardens. To me, a community garden means a food garden. That's how I would define a community garden, but that's not clear because we don't have a fulsome design or explanation yet. I think it's a great idea, but one that I'd want to see some budget behind and understand the maintenance and who's going to maintain. And so perhaps this is part of that strategic plan or that that the Gardens Committee is already developing and would come forward through the report from the CAO about the priorities, costs, and maybe a bit of a timeline. So I support this in principle, but the council requests a staff report back. Okay, so this is a staff report. I'm sorry, I missed that part. Okay, so yes, I could support that then. Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Thank you as well, Councillor Hutchinson, and then Councillor Shea.
Yeah, just to further this, this committee, I think just because we have community gardens in Durham, then some of the committee members said, well, why can't we have community gardens in Ayton or Newstead or Elmwood? So I think they're just looking to expand the program. Yeah, budget and whatnot, not sure how that all fits in, but obviously the staff, they're asking for a staff report. So I guess just some more information about what that would look like in Ayton, but they just want to jump on board the program. And I think it's a great opportunity. Thanks.
Councillor Shea.
I was just going to, pardon me, make the same point that the citizens in Ayton were recognizing what was happening in Durham and wanted to do something similar. So, and it is a staff report. So,
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. Does anybody need this motion read again? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Just a couple more items and then let's have a break. 9.7 West Grey Economic Development Advisory Committee, April 11th, 2022 minutes. Any comments? Now we have 9.8, which is the Climate Action Advisory Committee, April 12, 2022 minutes. Any comments with regard to the minutes, save and accept the recommendation at hand, which will come next? All right, not seeing anything. Clerk Sharbuck to the recommendation, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that council approves the proposal from the West Grey Climate Action Advisory Committee for the municipality of West Grey to host a free carbon footprint calculator workshop for members of the public, and further, that council directs staff to work with the members of the Climate Action Advisory Committee regarding public promotion of the event, coordinating guest panelists, and managing the technology requirements for the Zoom meeting workshop.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hamilton. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. All those opposed? Councillor Hutchinson.
Point of order.
Sure.
I'm just checking my, where are we on the agenda? I lost you. Where is this coming?
9, we're on the revised agenda, and this is 9.8, the Climate Action Advisory Committee, April 12, 2022 minutes, and we've had the mover and a seconder for the recommendation out of climate action. Do you have that before
sorry,
you?
I don't have the revised agenda. I guess that's why I'm missing it. When did that come out?
Okay, so it Clerk Sharbuck on the timing. I know it's posted on the agenda. I'm just if you could respond and then we'll deal with the vote.
I believe the original agenda was posted on Tuesday and the Climate Action Advisory piece was added and it was republished late Tuesday, or it was late Tuesday. It was republished.
Okay, sorry, I don't have that, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm calling the vote. All those in favor of the motion from the Climate Action Plan indicate with a raised hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 members. Those opposed. 6 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. There's one final recommendation. Clerk Sharbuck, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that minutes of committees and boards are hereby received.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. Well, I think we are at 10:30. Would everybody like a break and come back at 1:45? That makes sense. A lot of discussion, a lot of great work ahead. See you back sharp at 1:45. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome back. That was a really wonderful break. We are on item 10, correspondence. 10.1, items requiring action. 10.1.1, Robin Brown, request for a solution, Durham Ballpark. The recommendation here, council needs to provide direction. So is there a member of council that would like to put a motion forward with regard to this correspondence? Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I have a question before sort of we go further. I thought there was some work being done by staff to look at some things the last time we discussed this.
Yes,
And
I
I
could
wonder
have
if the CAO could comment on that.
Madam CAO could, but in actual fact, we're looking at the request from the citizen with regard to this. So I refer to page 34, 35
I understand.
of this correspondence. But Madam CAO, do you have any response to the councillor's inquiry?
Through you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Townsend, yes, staff had been working with Ms. Brown and at least had been drawn up. We haven't finalized that yet. And subsequent to that, this correspondence was received. So we need council's direction if they're interested in, dealing with her requests that are contained within this letter.
How does council wish to proceed with this item? Councillor Hergert.
I would like to make a motion that we defer this to staff to carry out the wishes of council.
But what are the wishes of council, quite frankly?
Yeah. Sure.
Clerk Sherlock, please.
Through you, Mayor, if there's direction regarding spending funds or providing funds to the person or the building, then it has to be an open session council resolution to approve that. Staff can't approve that money part or that donation or grant, whatever it's called.
So that is the request within the correspondence. So how are we dealing with this? Councillor Hergert.
Yes, so there is no money budgeted for this year. And because of that, if there is a budget request, then those should come forward maybe August, September for the next budget cycle. But as it is right now, we have not, West Gray has not put any money toward this. If there were appliances that were needed by the person for their rental days or the leasing period, then as many business owners do, they have to purchase their own equipment. And so I think that would be my expectation until council would look at this at budget next year.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So in similar thought process to Councillor Hergert, the council hereby directs that staff report back on these items through the 2023 budget process. Thank you.
So I'm just confirming that is your motion. Oh,
Yes.
thank you. I wanted to double check. So we'll wait for Clerk Sharbeck to read back the motion and I'll look for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hamilton, I'll just clarify the wording. That council hereby directs that staff report back on the requested items through the 2023 budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert, seconding. Questions on the motion? Councillor Shea.
There's 5 requests in this letter, 3 regarding budget allocation, 1 about sponsorship signs, and 1 about renewing a lease or establishing a lease. So would you like are we going to deal with the last 2 items in separate motions, or should we try and do one motion that's going to cover all 5 requests? Or I guess I'm also wondering from staff, is the lease negotiation in process? Do you need a council's approval to establish a lease for this facility?
We'll go to Clerk Sharbuck and then perhaps Madam CEO. Clerk Sharbuck first.
Through Mayor, that's a good question, Councillor Shea. I believe the signs is about creating revenue, and that would easily fit with the budget conversation about how we're raising money from that program, or it could be pulled out separately, but it does fit in there. And as far as the lease goes, the lease negotiation will continue, and that will come to council attached to a bylaw. So you'll see the final version, but at this point in time, I think there were a few details in the lease that were yet to be worked out, and then we would expect that Ms. Brown sign the final version, and we'll bring that to council for council's consideration. So it would be a separate process.
Madam CAO, anything to add?
Yes, if I may. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Further to the clerk's information on the lease, the negotiations and the staff have been working with Ms. Brown early this year. And at that time, it was before the fall fair, the Ag Society were certain if they were having their fall fair because COVID was still being COVID. Since that time, we know for a fact that the fall fair will be happening. So we would need to make an amendment to that lease if council would like us to ensure that facility is available for the Ag Society because they are holding their fair this year. Previously, the current lease doesn't have that stipulation in it. So that would be one of the amendments that we would be seeking support from council in that lease. And the other one would be pending what homecoming is, I don't know what their plans are. So while there is a draft lease, things have changed since then. The lease hasn't been signed. So if we could have direction on, support for those community groups that may need that facility, that's a conversation that we need to have clarity on.
Thank you. Councillor Shea.
So the clerk is saying that the first 4 requests would be handled by the motion on the floor. And the 5th request regarding the lease, it is in progress and will be coming to us once it's been finalized by staff. So we don't need to take any action at this time.
Clerk Sharbuck.
Sorry, I'll just, through you, Mayor, ask for clarification. I wonder, Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Hergert, if I could clarify and say that staff report back on the financial requested items through that process, just heard that word financial, and then perhaps in a follow-up motion, I'll just clarify with the CAO if it would help if there was direction to staff to provide allowances for homecoming and for the Ag Society for the fall fair as we work on revising the lease. And then it specifies that those pieces are added in there if it's council's wish, but it could be a separate after this motion.
Councillor Hamilton, you're the mover and Councillor Shea is the seconder. I had Councillor Shea written down. All right, I will concede to that. If Councillor Shea, you have no issue with that. Okay. Councillor Hamilton, is there anything further?
No, thank you. I think that small wording amendment that we talked about is good. And let's address the lease in a separate motion to make it clean. Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 points. On the program set in place for the sponsorship signs, I have two concerns. I know in the past the revenue was used to put back into the ballpark. So I'm assuming that means that the staff will take over that program. If we defer that until what happens in the fall, what happens this year? Are we losing an opportunity to get 2022 revenue from that signage? And I don't know the state of that, so I'm really hesitant to do that. Include that in the financial 1, 2, 3. And then when we do the follow-up one on the contract approval, I'd like to include not just the fall fair, but also homecoming. As you mentioned, I was going to raise that anyway, because they will have food, they will have whatever. And I just think that should be coordinated to make sure it's fine. and that would be Stephanie Crowley, right? Would be your contact for that. But I would rather see the sponsorship signs come out separately and at least be looked at for what's going to happen in 2022, not necessarily develop a full program. But I think that does need to happen.
Madam Clerk,
Thank you.
you're not tied to just one report back. You would decide whether there's going to be an option to deal with the signage in a separate report out. Your response to Councillor Townsend's inquiry.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, the sponsorship signs at the Ball Diamond, they will be treated exactly the same as arena boards at a hockey rink. So if an advertiser is interested in advertising on the boards at the field, they would contact staff and that process would just carry on and the revenue would come to the municipality then.
Councillor Townsend?
Yeah, thank you. That was my expectation, but I didn't know if there was something else going on behind the scenes, right? And to me, why would you lose 2022 revenue if you can still have it coming in? And you can use it even if the ballpark doesn't need it, then you can do it for the equipment going forward when you do your budget consideration. So thank you.
All right, Councillor Hergert.
One quick question about the sponsorship signs. Do we have any idea how much revenue those draw in?
I wonder, would Director Mighton be available for that response?
Sure, yeah, all right.
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, it was administered completely by the Ball Diamond Committee at the time, so we do not have a record of that.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Hergert?
So when we take over the sponsorship of signs, where does that money then land? Is it within the Department of Parks and Rec? Is it, where does that money go?
Director Mighton?
I would allocate it to the Durham Ballpark revenues.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, so my first thought is I'd really like to work with this group because they've done a lot of work for our Ball Diamond down there. If you look at it, it's in great shape compared to what it used to be. Put a lot of money into it. So I think I'd like to see us try to accommodate this group somehow. My first question is, how does this pavilion at the ballpark compare to other pavilions? Like I know Elmwood has a pavilion, and I think they do some wings or something out of their Elmwood community through the Elmwood community. And is Ayton their pavilion? I'm just wondering, what kind of setup? Do they have a grill? Do they have a fryer? Do they have the exhaust fan? How does this one compare? I know it doesn't compare quite with the arena ones, but how does it compare with the other pavilions in West Grey?
Madam CAO, do you want that question, or would that go to our, I think, okay, thank you. So Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer Hewlett, could you respond to that inquiry, please?
Thank you. For you, I am not totally abreast to the current equipment that is in our pavilions. However, what I do know from my basic knowledge is that they are, that all of them are basically at this same level. They are not fully equipped with, I'll say, commercial style kitchens, with the exception of the Elmwood Community Center Pavilion. But that is also a joint venture between ourselves, Brockton, as well as the Elmwood Chamber puts quite a bit of funding into that as well.
Anything further, Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I know like the arenas are a little bit different, but I wasn't sure whether any of that facility equipment in the arenas are portable. I know Ayton's a little bit different because it was he tend to bring in his own equipment a fair bit. But my thoughts were maybe in this sponsorship sign program, maybe since we don't have money allotted budget for this year, but maybe through the sponsorship sign, and I have no idea how much money comes into that maybe some of that funds could go directly towards putting some of these this equipment into the pavilion if it's going to be used on this nature. So that might resolve the budget issue for this year. So that's something we'd have to negotiate and talk with this group of how much funds comes in through that program, whether it's going to continue, and then maybe if some of that funds could be used. The other thing I wondered about is that, there's maybe an opportunity for outside facilities in terms of barbecues or an outside grill or an outside fryer. I don't know the ins and outs on all that, but maybe there's opportunity to do that this year, given the predicament we're in, sort of thing. So I'd like to investigate that sponsorship sign more and see where we're at with that, and maybe that can help solve the issue. Thanks.
Madam CAO, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, Councillor Townsend, it's always great when we have groups that are interested in working with us, much like the way the arena canteens are operated. They are, rent is based on the equipment that they're receiving, but they do supplement their operations with their own equipment. The lease that is in draft form right now is for this pavilion facility as is, where is. And if we're going to, we have to remember that we're now working with an individual, not with a community group. So that's a different kind of relationship. And we need to be mindful that any enhancements would have to be reflected in the lease agreement then.
Thank you. And I really want to keep focused. The request was dealing with some financial components, so we've got a motion at hand, but anything that is operational that staff should be dealing with this, I want to keep it so that we're on our lane and that staff is dealing with the appropriate operational part of this and bringing the agreement, should there be one, to council for consideration. Is there anything further? I want to go to first time speakers, then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to be clear that point 3, the $600 installation fee for extinguishing system was deferred or recommended it comes back for the 2023 budget, correct? One of the concerns I have is if they bring their own equipment, there's a fire there, they don't have that facility. They have the equipment. And again, for a $600 installation fee, we get free. I don't know why we wouldn't take advantage of that and protect the building and the people and anyone that's leasing it if they bring their own equipment. To me, I don't see a need for a deferral of that. And I think from our perspective, it's in our best interest from insurance and safety and everything else to do that and do that now.
Madam CAO, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. The $600 to install a anonymously donated system, I would really like to have an expert look at the condition of that and if we're spending money wisely. The other items that extinguishing system, the reason that she's asking for that to be installed is because she's also asking for us to purchase for her double fryers, electric grills that would go in conjunction with that. If we're not doing those other items, then there is no need for an extinguishing system because there's nothing combustible. I thought Mr. Hewlett had his hand up to help me out. Perhaps we could go with him just to clarify. Thank you.
Absolutely. Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer Hewlett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Madam CAO summed it up quite well. I believe that is the intention of the installation of the extinguishing system, was to go in tandem with the equipment purchase. If the equipment is not purchased, I believe Ms. Brown will find other means of cooking in the canteen area, so the extinguishing system would not be required.
Anything further, Councillor? Okay, thank you. Anything further? Clerk Sherwood, could you read the motion at hand, please?
Through Mayor, moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Hergert. The council hereby directs that staff report back on the financial requested items through the 2023 budget process.
All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. Those opposed? 6 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you. I just want to confirm, Councillor Hutchinson, do you have audio on our meeting?
Yes, I do. I was just thinking there. I didn't get a chance to vote, but
Okay. That's fine. We've dealt with the item already. We're dealing with 10.1.2, Multi-Municipal Wind Turbine Working Group, Wind Turbine Setback Recommendations.
Point of order, Mayor Robinson.
Yes, Councillor Hamilton.
Excuse me, Mayor Robinson. We didn't address the lease, and I believe staff are looking for guidance from council in a motion regarding that lease.
Thank you for that. Is there any? We only have the motion at hand here. Is the clerk, actually, Madam CAO, are you looking for any direction on the lease?
Through you, Mayor Robinson. So item number 5 in Ms. Brown's letter does ask for direction on the approval of a lease. And as I had mentioned, some of those negotiations happened prior to us knowing details of other community interest in that. So that would be helpful if council supports us working that into the draft.
So Councillor Hamilton, please continue.
So I would move that council hereby directs staff to include dates in the lease for Durham Homecoming and the Agricultural Society Fall Fair. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get the motion read back by the clerk. Councillor Hamilton, I'll ask if you're okay with the language, and then I'll look for a seconder. Thank you.
Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hamilton, I'll just confirm that this is your intention. The council hereby directs that staff amend the draft lease to include dates to allow for the use of the booth for the Durham Homecoming and for the Durham Agricultural Society Fall Fair. Does that work? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert? All right. Are there any comments with regard to the motion? Councillor Hergert.
I'm also curious, is the contract exclusive use? Would there be an allowance for food trucks that may want to set up that day? We have our own food truck bylaw. Is that separate and apart from this lease agreement? Or is there any language to that?
Clerk Setback.
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Hergert, that's a good question. And I believe the food trucks would be part of the homecoming negotiation. If they had an agreement with food trucks, that then the lease would allow for food trucks in that immediate area, perhaps. But I guess that's something to work out the details and see what the homecoming committee would like. Cody may have, Mr. Hewlett may have further comments.
Certainly, and I do see his hand. So Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer Hewlett, please go ahead.
Thank you. And through you, I don't have the exact lease in front of me. However, I am aware there is wording in there that the municipality is authorized to permit other operators within the area, which would apply to refreshment vehicles, that sort of thing.
Anything further, Councillor Hergert? No? Okay. Anything further, members of council? Okay. Clerk Trevor, if you could read the motion, then I will call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Just to clarify, Councillor Hergert, did you second that? Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Hergert, that council hereby directs that staff amend the draft lease to include dates to allow for use of the booth for the Durham Homecoming and Durham Agricultural Society Fall Fair.
All those in favor indicate with the raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of that motion. That motion is carried.
Mayor,
10
may
point.
I?
Certainly,
Sorry.
Councillor Hutchinson.
May I have a point of clarification? If there is such a thing.
Well, what is your question? Please go ahead.
Well, it goes back to the motion before regarding the putting the purchasing of equipment for the food booth off till 2023 budget. But I'm not sure about number 4, a program set in place for the sponsorship signs. Did we resolve that? Is that going to be pushed off to 2023? I'm lost on that point.
Madam CAO, would you please respond to
Yes,
that?
certainly. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hutchinson, I believe that we are just going to treat any advertising at the ball diamonds the same way as we would treat any advertising at a hockey arena. It would go through staff, and the revenue would go into the Durham Ball Diamond Fund.
Okay.
So an advertiser needs to work with staff now to get their ads created and posted.
Okay.
So we've dealt with that matter. Thank you.
That was my question. How we're going to resolve that? Okay, that's fine. I thought it was going to be left to 2023. Thank you.
10.1.2 Multi-Municipal Wind Turbine Working Group. Wind turbine setback recommendations. Again, we're looking as a council on how we wish to deal with this matter. Is there a motion that council is considering? Councillor Schiff.
I move we receive this for information.
Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Hergert? Oh. Well, I'm dealing with the first motion. So to receive the motion, it's moved by Councillor Shea. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor. Okay, any comments or questions with regard to this motion at hand? Councillor Hergert.
I would like to have planning staff advise how to incorporate this setback into our official plan and zoning that will be coming later this year.
So we do have a motion at this time to receive. Is there any other comments on this? We're just dealing with that. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. There is, to me, there's a real opportunity here for us to be part of that that group. And the reason I say that, I have attended at least one. I can't remember if I went to the second one or not. But anyway, the bottom line is that we are a prime target area for wind turbines. And these things that are coming out, and that I know they were working with MPP Walker and others within the provincial government to get this to happen. So I can't say they did it, but they certainly had a strong influence. And I think we need to keep an eye on that. So I won't be supporting the current motion on the floor. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Clerk Shabrak, could you just read back the motion with the mover and seconder, and then I'll call the vote on it.
Through Mayor, moved by Councillor Shea and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, that council receives the information.
All those, before I call the vote?
I don't know if you saw my hand or not, but.
Yes, I do. Go ahead, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I too believe that we need to revisit this in terms of whether we send a member to this group or whether we just look at our plans, official plan, because it is coming, and I think the setback, the 2,000 meter setback, is important so that we have some say. So I'd be interested to know what we have in our official plan or our bylaws now regarding wind turbines. I know we have something because it's been such a controversial issue in the past. So I would like to see us investigate that. But if we need to make another motion or something to do that after, we can do that, I guess.
All those in favor of the motion at hand indicate with a raised hand. All those opposed? The motion has lost. Councillor Hergert.
Yes, I would like to move a motion that planning staff bring back a report advising how to incorporate the setback for wind turbines into our official plan and zoning later this year.
We'll wait for Clerk Shabrak to read back the motion, and then I'll look for a seconder.
Mayor Robinson, Councillor Hergert, I'll just make sure I've got this. That planning staff report back advising on how setbacks for wind turbines may be addressed and incorporated into the official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw reviews later this year. Okay.
Is there a seconder for this, Councillor Hamilton? Any comments with regard to this motion? All those in favor indicate with the raised hand. 7 members of the council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Okay, we are now dealing with 10.1.3, Mark Stovall, Edge Hill School Board of Directors request to rent Glenelg Hall. How does council wish to deal with this? Councillor Hamilton.
Mayor Robinson, could we ask questions before we have a recommendation?
Yes,
Thank
ask
you.
your question.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. So my question to staff would be, this is before council because perhaps we don't have a monthly rate for such a activity, or if I could just have some clarity on how, just some feedback from staff, please. Thank
Certainly.
you.
Madam CIO, will you be addressing this, or Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer? It's your choice.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I'll start. Well, it's a letter of correspondence to council. And because this is a community hall, if council is interested in having a long-term tenant, that would be direction that staff would need before we could enter into negotiations. I see Mr. Stovall's advised what they're paying for a spot right now. We have no information on what kind of facility they're renting and how it would compare to our building. But it is an opportunity to have a permanent tenant and generate some revenue. But on the flip side, it is a community hall. So that's why council is being presented with this request.
Anything to add, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer? I certainly want to promote you to Director at this meeting. Pardon me for that. Please go ahead, Initiatives Officer Hewlett.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And through you, Madam CAO summed it up quite well. It is in front of council, as my understanding is that we would report back with a lease similar to as we have in the past, such as the canteens that we rented, that we would propose a long-term lease up to the will of council.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you very much. And so I think we've had like daycares, for example, have used our spaces perhaps. So we have a history of groups booking daytime. I'd want to get a sense, or if this isn't imposition on staff, if you have a sense already of how busy would the Glen Alcohol be throughout the daytime, typically?
Mr. Hewlett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Quite honestly, it's a little bit hard to say as we are still in the midst of the pandemic and the hall was shuttered for almost 2 years. However, with that being said, if I were to compare it to a comparable hall of Lamlash Hall, since reopening, the Lamlash Hall is getting quite well used. It's used fairly regularly, and the Glen Alcohol has basically sat vacant since reopening, and we have very, very limited inquiries for rentals of that hall currently.
One last question, Mayor Robinson. Have staff been in touch with the Glen Alcohol Committee for their feedback on this request?
Mr. Hewlett? Please go ahead, Mr. Hewlett.
I'm sorry, Mayor Robinson, I couldn't hear that audio there. We have not been in touch with the Glen Alcohol Committee as of yet. I was waiting for the will of council just to see how a council would like to proceed with this.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll leave it there in case there's other questions, but in principle, I support this. Let's get our halls actively used, and so thank you for those answers.
Thank you. And I think if staff is, depending on how council wishes to deal with this, and I'm just going to put this forward. I just note that it's one board member from the Edge Hill school that is approaching council on this. So if this does go for a discussion back to Edge Hill School, I would hope that there would be clarity set that it is the actual board the Edge Hill School Board that is putting this forward as opposed to an individual, or at least that we've got the clarity of where this request is actually coming from. Councillor Hutchinson. Oh, pardon me. Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer Hewlett first, then Councillor Hutchinson, then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, just a point of clarity on the note you had just mentioned about Mr. Stovall. I had been contacted by various different representatives of the school. However, I believe Mr. Stovall is just the main point of contact, so that's why the letter is through him. But I can confirm if you would like, if it is the will of the board or just multiple individuals. But through our correspondence back and forth, we'll touch base.
Yeah, and I think it'll become formalized if council does proceed with this through staff. Anyway, thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson and then Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to make sure that our halls are getting used, because if they don't, then we lose them. But my thoughts are, first of all, I would definitely want to reach out to the Glen community to see what their thoughts are on this. The other option I think we could do is maybe look at a 1-year lease just to see how that goes. But I think I would also make it that if there was an opportunity for the community to use the hall, that they could still do that. I know sometimes when teachers take over a space, then it becomes very much a teaching space, and there becomes a lot of paraphernalia that goes with it, which makes it difficult to use for other things. So I think there might be an opportunity here to experiment and see how this might work going forward on a temporary basis. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Again, a couple of my questions have already been asked, but I think Councillor Hutchison just asked when it's, if the school is to use it during the day, is it an exclusive rent to them or lease to them, and we can't utilize that facility at nights for activities, again, with the community, or even on the weekends for any functions we going on? That's a real key ingredient there, because I can't support shutting a community hall rate off and not having any place for that community to go to, especially when some of the work and a lot of the enhancements that we've been trying to do out that way. So I support it in theory, but a couple of those things. So I'd be looking for a staff report back on a couple of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if this does go through for a staff report, certainly the connect to the Glen Elk Hall Committee. We have a memorial plaque that we cherish there, so it would be how that is addressed, and also if there would be a rent discussion in terms of the rent and for fair market value in terms of a discussion on that. Those are just food for thought in terms of some elements. Councillor Townsend, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to elaborate on Councillor Hutchinson's and Deputy Mayor Hutchinson's comments, because if you take what's there, we don't know if the committee, the work they do, will they continue to do it? And if not, who will? Whatever they are doing within the hall or to maintain that hall. And then the other catch is it might not be a matter of just whether we lease it to them. We could do a day lease, but the trick is with the setup, does it even make the hall usable at other times? And I'm sure they don't want to take down and put back on weekends or evenings and that kind of stuff. So I think if we're making the decision, we're probably making a decision to take it away from the community, and therefore we should understand the impact fully. So hopefully that will be contained in the report as well.
My anticipation is that we'll, depending on how we're dealing with this, because we don't have a motion on the floor at this time, but if it is an exploration into this, that it would be looking at the impact on the community, a business case, etc., because it is, after all, a cherished community hall. So I think that is incredibly important. Is there one final thought, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we do request a report from staff taking into account the discussion and the points we've raised here.
Thank you very much for that. We'll wait back for Clerk Setback to read it. Thank you.
I'd also like to recommend that, if possible, that we bring that back to the next council meeting, because I do know they were talking about a June, and I don't know if that can happen. So
we're getting an indication that that would not be. I'm going to suggest that where we are in time frame and the amount of work, and I'll put it over to Madam CAO, but certainly I think that quick of a time frame is not possible. Madam CAO, to that.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson and Councillor Townsend. I appreciate the time factor. I don't see us being able to hit that May 17th date, but June 3rd is probably doable. Thank you.
We're just waiting at this point for the clerk, and we will be patient for the clerk to read back the motion, and then I will confirm the language with Councillor Townsend and then look for a seconder.
Through Mayor Robinson. Councillor Townsend, I'll just clarify that your motion is that council hereby directs staff to report back on this request, noting any impact on the community use of the hall and financial considerations. Does that sum it up? Okay.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor, any questions on the motion at hand? Councillor Hergert.
Yes. So in addition to what's part of the motion, I think the exclusivity of this building or not, I understand that Edge Hill School has a differing calendar year than most boards, most school boards. So that may provide an opportunity for summer use of Glen Elk Hall. I look forward to staff's, report back on who uses it. The improvements that could potentially be made for a commercial tenant, what we would allow, that I don't know if it's been designated as a heritage building, but it most certainly is heritage characteristics. So just what improvements a tenant could make. Current market value, as previously mentioned, just what a current rental amount for a fantastic building like that is. And I think that's all my notes right now. So I look forward to staff report.
Anything further, council members? Oh, all right. There's nothing further from council members. Over to you, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer.
Thank you, and through you, just in our preliminary discussions with Edgehill School, just when they had originally approached us with regards to this rental, my understanding is that they are hoping for exclusivity during the school year. However, during the times that school is not in operation, the hall would be, for lack of a better word, turned back over to us, which would be able to use it for our regular rentals. However, I believe the assumption is that they would have exclusivity throughout the school calendar year.
Thank you for that. Clerk Shepherd, if you could read the motion, I'll call the vote.
You, Mayor. Moved by Councillor Townsend and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. That council hereby directs staff to report back on this request, noting any impact on the community use of the hall and financial considerations.
All those in favor indicate with the raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. 10.2, items for information. 10.2.1, Durham Hospital Foundation thank you letter. All right. 10.2.2, Michaels and McFadden thank you card. 10.2.3, Courtney Harkin, resident, West Grey Police. 10.2.4, Roger Leclerc, resident, West Grey Police. Okay, Clerk Shepherd, Councillor Hutchinson, please.
I'd just like to make a comment when the time is appropriate.
Did you have a comment on one of these items before we go to the recommendation?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so the last two regarding the police, the West Grey Police, I do note that a lot of people, a number of people, when they move to this area, they do look for hospitals, schools, and obviously from these people, they look for a policing service. So I think that's important to keep in mind. Also, I'd like to add that as you see support around our area for our local police service, that there are approximately 500 signs out there. So I just wanted to put that out there for people's information. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Shepherd to the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation is that council hereby receives all correspondence items not otherwise dealt with.
All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Thank you. 7 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you. We are now dealing with staff reports. 11.1, Director of Development and CBO. 11.1.1, 2022 first quarter building activities. Clerk Sharbeck to the motion, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that CBO report 2022 Q1 building department activity be received for information.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hutchinson, questions with regard to the motion or the report? Councillor Herger.
I just want to reach to staff and say, how is that department going? It seems like the numbers look amazing. We'll have similar to 2020 and 2021 numbers. How is staffing going? How is our relationship with Chatsworth going? Do we have all the resources we need?
CBO Shipwreck, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. We have just recently posted for an additional inspector plans review person. So hopefully that recruitment will go well. We are looking for an experienced inspector, somebody that can jump right in and hopefully start work right away. As council's aware, last year there was some significant overtime done by all staff in the building department. And so hopefully if we can hire somebody on, we can reduce those numbers. Otherwise, in my opinion, our numbers are going to be pretty close to where we were last year, if not maybe better. Once phase 2 of the Welton subdivision starts, the housing numbers are going to spike drastically. So that's going to be a fairly large burden on the staff. So if we can't recruit anybody, then yeah, the overtime numbers will be similar to last year.
Anything further, Councillor? No?
Could I just ask our CAO to have a comment about the relationship ongoing Chatsworth?
Madam CAO.
Certainly through you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hergood, that partnership is going extremely well. The staffing complement is managing both sides of that contract. Mr. Shiprock can speak more specifically, but I know that our permits and our response time for Durham, or for West Grey in general, is meeting the requirements, as is Chatsworth. So we're fine there.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council? All those in favor of the motion then indicate with the raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. 11.2, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer. 11.2.1, West Grey Farmers Market Support. Clerk Charbot, to the recommendation, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that report Economic Development West Grey Farmers Market be received and that council support in-kind assistance of the market.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Shea, is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hamilton is seconding. Is there any questions on the report or the motion? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to see that we might get some more farmers markets going. I know that fresh vegetables, fruit, whatever is really good, and I think it would help maybe stop people if we get the right location for that to happen. I'm a little concerned about Riverside Park. I realize it's on the Friday. Again, I get into the homecoming link this year because I know they're going to do a lot there. So that will be number one. Also, and homecoming has identified the same issue, is the fact that there's trucks and buses that park there on off hours when they're not using their vehicles. And I'm not sure how that's going to get addressed, but it's something that somebody from homecoming is going to be looking at as well. And also, I didn't know if there'd be enough parking. I don't know how much space you would have for the market, and therefore what happens with parking, because it is a parking lot that we're giving up, right? So I'm not sure if anyone has those answers, but I'd certainly like some comments if I can.
Oh, I'm sure our Corporate and Community Initiative Officer does. Please go ahead, Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you. Through you, not too much to share. However, I can share that since this report has been published, there has been conversations just with the individual who's looking at running the market, and in her conversations with business owners, the operational day may change from Friday to Saturday, just based on the availability of vendors. However, with that being said, I believe the start of the market will be very small but mighty. I don't anticipate that there will be a huge influx of vendors. However, with that being said, we can take it as it comes and reevaluate the location as things change and progress moving forward. With regards to the truck parking, as council is aware, council has authorized a number of individuals to park over there overnight, as the permitting of large commercial vehicles is not permitted on our current residential streets.
Anything further? Good. Anything, members of council? Councillor Hutchinson? Councillor Hutchinson?
Yes, yeah, I too do have a concern with the large trucks and buses parked there. I don't know how we resolve that if we've given permission, especially even down at the main entrance to the trail. Quite often he blocks it and you can't even see the trail. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is there will be hydro there soon. We're in the process of finally getting some hydro for a box that the music group can access hydro. It'll be locked, but they'll have access to that. So that's a bonus for the area too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hergert?
Okay, I have quite a few questions, but the in-kind, is that just setting up stops and goes for streets on the day of? Is that what?
I wonder if you could just give your questions and then we could get a response back from staff.
Yeah, I just asked the question.
No, you said you had a number of questions.
I do have a number of questions.
Please
so
go
what
ahead.
is the in-kind work that's being done?
Oh, so you want individual, instead of asking all your questions at once.
I'd like to
To
ask
do.
my question, and the next question will be, what does staff have for bandwidth to accommodate this new request?
We'll go with those
And then
two
it leads
questions.
to the next question and the next. So yes, maybe one at a time suits.
We've got two questions here. CAO Johnston, could you please respond to those two?
Yes, Mayor Robinson. Thank you, Councillor Hergert. I'm trying to recall, Mr. Hewlett, you have had conversations with our Director of Public Works, and a lot of this work is, well, it depends now. If it's a Saturday market, that might change the original conversation, because on a Friday, it was part of just their schedule, their route. If it's a weekend market, I think that might make an adjustment to capacity. So, Mr. Hewlett, have you had that opportunity to clarify?
Mr. Hewlett, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, my understanding of the in-kind support was that it was just for regularly scheduled road closures. Support would not move beyond that. I have not had an opportunity to circle back with Director Glazier with regards to the change in date, as it had just been mentioned just the other day in passing.
Okay, I'm trying to avoid the back and forth on questions, so if you can bundle your questions together so that staff can respond to it, so we can have that dialogue. So please continue.
I'd prefer to ask my next question, which is, who collects the fee? I imagine there'll be a fee for this service.
Madam CIO.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. We don't have a rental fee for the parking lot. So this is why we would need council support, that we're providing the space and the barricade removal, the road closure as an in-kind support to get the market started. Vendors will be paying, I imagine they're going to be paying for their spot, but that would go to the farmers market organizer. Mr. Hewlett, Madam Mayor, if I've missed something, please just raise your hand.
Is there anything further on this on this question, Mr. Hewlett?
No, Madam CAO had sent it up.
Thank you. Your next question.
So is there a fee for renting this space? No, not at this time, but we will have staff involvement, and the organizer of the market stands to profit basically at the generosity or subsidization from people that live here. This person may not actually be a resident of West Grey. Maybe, we don't know, right?
Through you, Mayor Robinson, I believe they do farm here in West Grey, which is lovely. Part of the reason staff is supporting this is as an economic development driver to get people into our downtown core, wandering, visiting, which is why I know that the organizer is trying to work with the retail, on Main Street to see what would be a great time for bringing more customers to the downtown core. So we don't see this as a long-term arrangement, more of a pilot for this year, and then we could report back to council to let them know if this market is going to have a future, what that professional or what that partnership could look like.
So I guess I'm paralleling this to the Newstat craft show. And we rent the space to somebody, and then that money, that revenue that's generated comes back to us as these vendor locations. I'm not seeing in this model that we maybe have that much restraint on it. We could potentially have 5,000 people show up for a day. What do we do for policing? What do we, is that space suitable for, it just depends on the marketing and who's available that day and so on. So I guess I'm looking, I also read that this is an economic development initiative, but I don't see that this is a recommendation from economic development. So I'm just curious what path it's made to get to council's table. And at this time, I feel like I have too many questions about we've just never done it before. So just the questions that support that. Who's going to be there? What happens if we get too many people? How do we restrain it back? Where does the money go? These kind of things. So I still have a lot of questions at this point, and I don't think I can support it at this moment. But if there was a recommendation from economic development, that might look a little different to me. Maybe they've already investigated it, and with the support of that committee would have brought forward a motion. So that's.
Madam CIO, do you have a response to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hergert, you raised a pretty exciting scenario if we had 5,000 people shopping in Durham. So to that, I thank you for your optimism. We did bring this to the Economic Development Committee, and they are supportive of this. As much as it is for retail, it's also tourism. So there's opportunities for us to leverage the presence of the market as well. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of logistics to work out, but we wouldn't proceed any further without the support of council, which is why it's here today.
Thanks. All right, Councillor Hergert, have you completed your inquiries? Is there any other member of council that wishes to speak? Councillor Hamilton, please, and then Councillor Hutchinson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Robinson. And through you to CAO, that parking lot's been used for Durham Arts Fest, for other events, and we've never charged for use of the parking lot. Is that correct? Okay. Would you imagine, you're talking about a one-year pilot, would there be a very simple MOU of memorandum of understanding between West Cray and the organizers for this year?
Madam CIO, please.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, Councillor Hamilton, I'd like Mr. Hewlett to confirm that we had started on an MOU route with the organizer, but what they're really asking for is so minimal that it really is just to safety the area. And then they're going to take care of the cleanup and all of that. But so I don't know that we were going to do a formal MOU, and I'm looking at the monitor, seeing nods from Mr. Hewlett. Yes.
Anything further, Mr. Hewlett, please, to Councillor Hamilton's inquiry?
That is correct. When Ms. Cook had originally approached me about this market, we had started down the route of an MOU. However, we quickly found out that what was to be included in the MOU was items that we would typically support anyways, such as regularly scheduled road closures, that sort of thing. So we chose to go this route and just request the in-kind support of council, as we didn't believe an MOU was warranted at that time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm still reflecting on an MOU just for clarity, just so everyone's on the same page in terms of setup, takedown, garbage. Are there consequences if the place is a mess on the Sunday or that weekend after? So it's really clear for them that they understand when to expect staff to set up the roadblocks, that kind of thing. So I think even like a very simple one-page MOU would bring me some comfort in having that clarity between the two parties. So I support this in principle, but I would support it with the support of also an MOU, just for clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting opportunity, and obviously there's lots of details that we don't have yet. I'm not sure about road closure unless it's huge. I'm not sure why we're closing roads, but I do see that there'd be a need for a section off a part of the parking lot that people couldn't drive into. They can just park and then visit the market. So yeah, lots of details to work out, but I think let's get it started and see where it goes. I'm sure it'll grow if it's going to be successful, and we maybe have to make some tweaks as we go along. So well, I'm looking forward to support this. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other member of council. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just thinking, what about the municipal parking lot here? In the sense it's on 4, there's lots of parking. It's not used on a weekend if it was a Saturday. It takes away road closures. Like there's so many other solutions, right? I mean, I thought of the landscaping lot that was there before, that wasn't being used and et cetera. I don't know whether they'd be agreeable. They might, but the site itself says there's so much challenge, if you will, to actually do that. The problem is you don't get all the Highway 6 traffic, and that's probably your biggest traffic, versus the 4. But anyway, I just throw that out. But obviously, I think we do need that report back from staff. So thank you.
Mr. Hewlett, I know you had your hand up. Do you have a comment back with regard to either the last item or the previous?
Thank you. Through you, my comment was in reference to Councillor Hutchinson's comment. Just for clarity, we internally use road closures for parking lot closures as well, just as the information contained in that form is relevant to a parking lot closure as well. So when I referenced road closure, it would just be the closure of said parking lot.
Thank you. Councillor Shea?
Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, there is. It's actually the staff recommendation, and it is moved by you, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Okay, thank you. Is there any other question, members of council? Councillor Hamilton?
Oh, thanks, Mayor Robinson. I'd like to add an amendment then to the recommendation. It's an addition. So it says that council support in-kind assistance of the market, and my addition would be, and that staff develop an MOU.
Will Clerk Sharpak, would that be an amending motion or yes? So we have a move by Councillor Hamilton. Could you read back her language to the motion? I'll go for a seconder.
Through Mayor, Councillor Hamilton, that the main motion be amended by adding, and that staff develop an MOU.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert, any questions on the amending motion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with the raised hand. 6. Those opposed? 1. 6 members of council voted in favor, 1 in opposition. The amending motion is carried. Clerk Sharpak, to the main motion then, please.
Through Mayor Robinson, moved by Councillor Shea and seconded by Councillor Hamilton, that report economic development, West Grey Farmers Market be received, and that council support in-kind assistance of the market, and that staff develop an MOU.
All those in favor of the motion indicate with a raised hand. 6. Those opposed? The motion is carried 6-1. 11.3 CIO, 11.3.1 right to disconnect policy. Clerk Sharpak, to the recommendation, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that report right to disconnect policy be received for information, and that the West Grey personnel policy be amended to include the right to disconnect policy in accordance with Bill 27, Working for Workers Act 2021.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, is there a seconder for this motion, Deputy Mayor? Questions on the motion or the staff report, beginning with Councillor Shea, then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I support this policy. There were some things in it that I thought were superfluous or distracting, and so I was going to recommend some adjustments to the policy if that's permissible. So, for example, in paragraph 2 of the policy, it says that employees' time outside of work hours are meant for the employees to recharge and spend time as they wish. I think we should take out recharge. We don't really have any concern or care or business asking what the employees are doing outside of work time. If they're recharging, that's up to them. If they're working another job and doing moonlighting, that's up to them. So I think we should take out the word recharge. I think we should take out paragraph 3, the following paragraph, that refers to stress and mental health issues, because again, I think the purpose of this policy is to separate the employer's expectations of what the employee is doing outside of work time. So I think that we should be implementing this policy just because the employee's time outside of work time is their own, not for any other reason, not because they're at risk of injury or going to reduce our liability or anything like that. It's just, it's their business what they're doing, pardon me, outside of work time. So I would recommend removing paragraph 3. On the second page, paragraph 5, where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this was West Grey understands that employees may want or need to work outside of normal hours to meet time-sensitive deadlines or to attend to urgent matters. Again, I think that undermines the whole purpose of this policy. So I would take that out as well. Page 4, paragraph 2. If employees send communication outside of working hours, others feel more likely to obligated to respond or assume that the employee sending the communication will be available during those hours. We should be asking employees not to send communication outside of work hours. So I think we're just building loopholes into this policy. And finally, on the same page, paragraph 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, it's the whole rationale of providing mental health support as the undergirding argument for this policy. I don't think that that's really should be our concern. So those are my recommendations, and I would look to staff for a comment.
Thank you, Madam CAO. This is your report and policy. Please respond.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and Councillor Shea, thank you for your comments. I think from a staff perspective, it's comforting for them to know that their employer is aware of a healthy work-life balance, and that's what this policy is intended to do. It also is a tool for them to know that, unless it's an urgent matter, there is no expectation for them to respond to emails. I mean, I receive emails all the time, and when this policy is adopted, I will have that comfort that I'm just like every other employee, and it's up to me to police my time if I'm on duty or not. And not everybody feels that level of security in their position, which is what the policy provides for them. So I would like to leave some comment in here that we are a healthy employer, whatever that language looks like when we work through this. I'm fine with that. I just think it's very important that is part of the spirit of the policy, is our commitment to making sure that they know that they've got a work life and we respect that they have a non-work life. So that's really, and I think that's where a lot of this language came from in the template that we all agreed that was a decent template. So happy to carry on with the conversation. Oh, and I'll pass back to the Mayor.
Madam Clerk, did you have a comment?
Just in concurrence with the CAO, it is the spirit and the wording of the actual legislation that employers shall care about mental health. Mm-hmm. That is, it's worded, and the policy, the template follows the legislation pretty carefully to make sure all those legislative pieces are included in it. Unfortunately, we do need some exceptions. There'll be lots of staff working outside of regular hours. Quite often you'll see the agenda published well after 4 p.m. Okay, and that's necessary to meet the deadlines, if at all possible, in our procedural bylaw. The election, voting doesn't end until 8 p.m. So some of us will be at work that day for a little bit longer, as well as on weekend and in evenings to do some voting help kiosks. But there's also urgent matters when a landfill is closed or a bridge is closed or there's a significant weather event or a road is closed. We expect communication staff to be able to be on that on social media and on our website, regardless if it's Saturday night or Sunday morning or whenever. So although it is, yes, respect that time away, it also has to recognize that there are times when some of us do have to be on call, I guess, for those urgent situations. But outside of the urgent situations, there's the understanding.
I need to put my mic on.
No, I think you understand that I do support the policy wholeheartedly, and that I think that the right to disconnect should just be a right, and I don't think it needs to be rationalized or justified through any sort of argumentation other than that right exists. So that's, I'm just trying to make that as clear as possible. But if you prefer it to be this way, I'm fine with that. But because I do think it's your policy. So no further comments. Thank you.
Clerk Setback.
I think if there was an HR matter or a difficulty, then not having the policy clear for all staff would definitely put the corporation in at risk of exposure to liability, I would say.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. I have similar comments as Councillor Shea in one area, and that is we all care about mental health in general, etc. So it's covered in the intent, and maybe that's where it should stay, you know, rather than repeating it a few places. I understand the legislation is there because we should care about that, and I applaud you for doing it like this and so quickly, because I do believe that it's critical and people need to have the support from the employer. More importantly, they have to be able to understand part of that responsibility is theirs. I wouldn't ban anybody from sending an email at any time. They don't have to connect. That's the whole catch. So you don't need to manage both ends of the stick. You only have to manage the one, and that is don't go on your machine. For example, if you get something that's coming to your email, or to your phone, rather than an email where you got to go look for it, right? And it's coming as a notice. Hopefully the procedures could support it in an emergency type thing that you can distinguish between one to the other. So as well as the policy, procedures can also be used to help them understand when they should or should not worry about what someone sent. If you're working Saturday afternoon because you have to, there's just so much and you're going on vacation and it says, I got to finish it, then you want to get stuff off, right? You don't want to sit and wait and say, on the third day of my holiday, I'm now going to remember to send that. Those kind of things just become frustrating. So if there's a way of working the procedures around the policy, I'd encourage you to do that. And I'm not telling you what to do, but having been in the situation where I got into that years and years ago, it was more the procedures or what people were allowed to do, like not get on their machine and things like that, that would solve a lot of your problems, right? With them getting on and now feeling obligated. You can't react what you don't see. So just some experience sharing is really there. And I, like I said, my opening comment was, if you're talking mental health and why it's being done, put all that in the intent, and then you're fine, right? You don't have to spread it out through the document. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel it's a modern policy. I think it's necessary for this corporation to have this type of policy, and I will be supporting the motion at hand. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Through you to our CAO, could you clarify how this policy interacts with how council communicates with staff? I would expect that the expectation is that council also not be emailing staff after hours, for example. That's not captured here. Maybe this kind of policy can't or doesn't do that. But I just also want to add, as members of council, we could find ourselves in being fully employed. And so as council, I'm often doing my research and my emailing in the evening on the weekends, not expecting a response from staff, just getting it off my plate out the door for the next weekday. And so I did notice in the policy that there's an ability to schedule your emails so that they don't leave your sent box until a certain hour. Maybe that training could be provided then to council. So just to sum it up, how can council, what are the expectations of council, and should those be captured here in the policy?
Madam CAO, please.
Through Mayor Robinson. Councillor Hamilton, you raise a good point. I'm not sure that we've identified clearly council's role. So it really would impact me, quite frankly, and however, just taking all of your feedback to heart, the challenge that we have as a corporation is we're extremely lean and we have very dedicated staff. So that's a recipe for people to give, go above and beyond. It really is. And this is a bit of a security blanket for staff to know that it's okay to ignore me on Sunday morning because I'm not going to be writing to you anymore. It has to wait. A lot of people, just for their own their own comfort, they prefer to deal with things, and then they're not coming in on Monday with a mountain of emails to go through. That's on them. As to your point, Councillor Townsend, it's as much you need to own your time as I need to respect your time. So I'll go to the clerk to help me through the council perspective, because that's something that that we probably should explore. Please. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Through you, Mayor, I think it is an important piece, and I think the right to disconnect policy, it isn't a should, it's a shall. It's mandated. And we shall have it, and it shall include specifics, not just an introductory. And it's the same as similar to a harassment and violence in the workplace policy. The detail of it and the explanation of it throughout that policy has been tested countless times, and there's mountains of case law to say, be clear and say it all, and you say it as many times as the legislation suggests you do. So the leaner isn't necessarily the better with the HR policies, and it does need to be understood by every employee. And we have a variety of, we have a mixed bag of employees with a variety of levels of access to computers and different levels of education, that it does have to be clear. And I think with the CAO being council's only employee, really, I think everybody understands that sometimes you think of things in the evening and you just have to send it off. Or as Councillor Hamilton said, you'll be at work the next day and not have time, or away. So we think of things and send them off. But I think it's the understanding with this policy in place that when the CAO receives them, she may not look at them until Monday morning. Or she may, depending on how, what's crossed her mind at you know, Sunday morning or Saturday evening. But when she passes it on, then she knows that it's not necessarily an immediate response. And if it's an urgent message, then it's dealt with in an urgent manner. And it's not just left sitting in our inbox over the weekend. It's followed up with a phone call or whatever's required. But I guess knowing that there's no expectation for a reply outside of business hours does change. Perhaps it's a self-imposed obligation or the weight of that obligation, but it's still there with most of our dedicated employees, that if you've been asked a question, an answer is expected. So I guess this just clears the air and makes it understood that if it's not urgent, everybody knows it can wait, but you had to get it off your plate at that moment. And and it's not then received as controlling the CAO's time on the weekend or outside of workplace hours. She's not. The air is clear with her as well, that she can do as she pleases with that time.
Okay,
So.
anything further, members of council? Councillor Hergert, then Councillor Shea.
Quick question. How does this apply to, I know we have some staff that have a full-time job here, and then I don't really understand, I don't need to know, but they also would help us on committees or boards or something in the evening, not trying to say it stops at 5 if I'm having a technical or a communique about a meeting. So that seems like it would be well in the scope of, you're already working, we have a plan, we have a meeting, and it's a thing. Would you, I mean, are we thinking like a half hour before that meeting and a half hour after that meeting? And I say that because when 4:30 happens here, that employee is able to go have dinner, do whatever they got to do. And then there is an expectation for like a 6:30 meeting in the evening. I wouldn't want to be encroaching on their time to, you know, to be doing whatever else they do. And then it comes to, well, is that the urgent? Is that, you know, it's already planned, it's those kind of things? Is that how I see that?
Madam CAO.
Through Mayor Robinson. So Councillor Hergert, there was, you know, not every job here is 9 to 5. And, you know, if it's a scheduled meeting that staff are expected to attend, we account for that time in another way. They may shift their day that day. They may, leave a little early on a Friday. So we do a little bit of an accounting for our time in that regard where possible. It sounds like it would be possible a lot, but it's not actually, because then, it's a snowball, right? Because then what are you not getting to, and days are long. For example, evening council meetings, now that we're doing them from home, we'll come in here and some of us will leave earlier in that afternoon, just to sort of get that break in between. I think, as the clerk mentioned, this policy really is just to let people know that if it's something that's not planned in your workday and it's not urgent, you don't need to worry about it till the next work day. That's really the gist of this.
Anything further, Councillor Shea?
Just briefly responding to something you said earlier. You said we're lean and we have dedicated staff, and they're often likely to say yes when they really should have the option to say no. And again, my couching the mental health issues as a rationale, I think further supports that line of thinking for the staff. If they say, it's Saturday, I just received a request from a coworker, I'm in a good mental health place, I'm not feeling unduly stressed, therefore I should respond to this employer, my colleague, because this policy is really to support mental health and I'm not having that issue. So I wished it was clearer and just said, you really shouldn't respond. We're encouraging you not to respond. We're trying to take that out. It's like we don't say to people, you can take a lunch break for a half hour every 4 hours. We say you must take a lunch break. And we don't say you must take a lunch break because you're hungry. We just say you must take a lunch break. But again, it's your policy. If you want to revise it, feel free, but otherwise I'd support it.
Are there any other questions on this side of the table? Councillor Hutchinson, your screen went out for a second, so I just want to double check. Did you have a question or not? No? Okay. Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask about non-compliance, or how you deal with complaints, because I don't see that addressed here, but I know sometimes there's an HR overall type overreaching, if you will. If we get a complaint, this is what we do. But I'm not sure how it applies to here, because it's kind of an interesting one, right?
Whose complaint, Councillor?
Sorry?
What do you mean by complaint?
Well, someone approaches a supervisor, manager, CAO, and says, I'm still getting barraged by emails, right? What do I do? And I know you're going to have to investigate, what they're saying, but the trick is, do you have a process, or how will that actually be addressed? Because I don't see it here within the policy, right?
Through you, Mayor Robinson. So, Councillor Townsend, this policy would not be in isolation of any of our other HR policies that people could be having challenges with. So, if someone's feeling that it's not a safe workplace, if there's health and safety concerns, or they're feeling bullied, we do have a process that they start with. They can start with their immediate supervisor, unless that's not appropriate. Then they just always come to the CAO, and then I launch a formal investigation at that point. So if someone's feeling that this policy is not being honored in their personal experience, then I would need to know about that, and then we just escalate it through the process.
One further?
Yeah, just a minor comment there. That's what I meant by overreaching, right? You have a process that overreaches all of them. Do you mention it in each policy though? And if you do, I didn't see it here, maybe some reassurances that complaints will be dealt with. Just that last little tidbit, right? But
Madam CAO.
Through you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you for that, Councillor Townsend. I don't know that every policy says if you feel that this isn't being honored, here's your chance to, or here's your process. So we'll have a look at that for sure.
Okay. Not seeing anybody else. Clerk Setback, would you mind reading the motion? Just because we've had a lot of discussion, and then I'll call the vote. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, moved by Councillor Herger and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, that report right to disconnect policy be received for information, and that the West Grey personnel policy be amended to include the right to disconnect policy in accordance with Bill 27, Working for Workers Act 2021.
All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you for bringing this policy forward. Item 12, questions. In accordance with the West Grey procedural bylaw, members may request clarification or updates on previous agenda items. Is there anything at this point? Councillor Hergert.
I was just curious when the police service board will be willing to meet with council in that joint meeting that was talked about several months back.
The West Grey Police Services Board will address the item at their upcoming meeting, which is this Thursday. And it is intended that a response will be back to council.
So I also note that twice the police service board hasn't been able to meet because of technical difficulties. Is there a change or has that been corrected yet?
We've had to adjust the our meeting time because there were technical difficulties here at West Grey for broadband. So the meeting we are having is this Thursday.
This Thursday at 9 a.m.?
No, it's an afternoon meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and just give me 1 minute. It should be on the website, but if it, let me give you the date. Thursday. Okay, that is April. This is May. Thursday. Okay, Thursday, May 5th at 1 p.m.
And you fully expect at that meeting that we'll have a date to put in a calendar for a joint meeting?
It's on the agenda.
Perfect.
Thank you for your questions. Is there any other question with regard to this item on the agenda? Thank you. Item 13, bylaws. 13.1, bylaw 45-2022, zoning amendment, Borkamp Z07.2022. Clerk Sharbuck to the recommendation, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that bylaw 45-2022, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 37-2006 for property known as 521020 concession 12 NDR, Township of Bentic, be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert. Any questions on the motion? All those, you have a question? Go ahead.
I actually, it's a comment. I wanted to know, this is one planning matter that has come up from severance to zoning amendment to council. And during that time, which is very streamlined, and I appreciate that, I'm curious about the fee that we charge for a severance or zoning amendment. If this would be a case study for doing one, collecting the fees, how much staff time was involved for planning and how much staff time or council time and CAO and so on.
Excuse me, Councillor, we're just dealing with the zoning amendment for this particular application.
Yes.
And that's what this bylaw is dealing with, not an overall assessment of process.
I understand
So
where we are
we are
at.
just dealing with this Borkamp application only.
What I'm hoping to do is to pin the fees for a severance and a zoning amendment so that we could potentially update our fees based on the
Again,
one.
your item is
Thank
out
you
of
for your
order at this
time.
time.
Appreciate it.
So we're just dealing with the bylaw at hand. Is there any other questions with regard to the bylaw? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Item 13.2, bylaw 46-2022, establish a conference, seminar, and professional development policy. Clerk Sharbuck to the recommendation.
Through Mayor Robinson, the recommendation is to read the conference or read the bylaw first, second, and third time. However, there were concerns about an amendment. So I'm wondering if before we move in second this motion to read it for second and third time, if there were any, if we could address any questions or any possible amendments, because it may be more appropriate. If it's a word here and there, we can tidy it up. But if it's more than a typo or an error, perhaps it might be more appropriate to read it a first and second time. Take it away, make the amendments, and bring it back. So before we get too deep into a resolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the suggestion. Members of council, are there any comments? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. I did send a memo to staff with a couple of observations, and I think they could be managed here. I think they're fairly straightforward. For example, it talks about 2021 conference, and I think that should be 2022 unless I'm missing something that is for a special reason, and that was in 1B, paragraph 1B. Also, the council conference and seminar section didn't deal with meals or incidental expenses. So I think if you agree, it would just be a matter of copying those over into that same section or having a general section, your choice. But the trick would be just to make it clear that it does apply to council as well. And just looking to see if there was a third one, which is in 1E, which talks about alternate economical travel. And my only concern there was to be clear that, for example, if you're traveling, say, across country and you have to leave the day before, that alternate travel economy of scale should also include any other incidentals that you encounter at the same time. Only because you have to travel that far in advance, you might need an extra night or whatever the case may be. So, and that's when you're doing the review of what's economical one route versus the other. I mean, chances are you wouldn't drive versus fly if the conference is in BC, but if it's 500, 600, 700 kilometers, you might. But by driving, you might save a hotel room. I don't know how you reflect that, but.
So I'm thinking, but Madam Clerk, the examples by which Councillor Townsend is suggesting some possible changes, are you suggesting them based on your preamble comment that this potentially be read for a second for other work to be done on the policy for consideration, or what would be your suggestion on this? Because I'm not certain that these can be done at this time, so I'm looking for some guidance.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, I'm just wondering if perhaps a first and second reading and allow us to put our heads together on the wording of that economical travel, so that the third and final reading that's it, we're done. But I'm not sure, unless I'll defer to the CAO if you want to proceed right now with something specific.
Madam CAO, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. And I believe our Director of Finances, she may be able to provide a little bit of clarity, because unless I'm misunderstanding, I thought that the council allotment of $1,500 annually was all inclusive, that there wasn't any additional opportunity to submit other expenses, but I could have missed a message somewhere along the way. Oh, I see she's on screen now, Madam Mayor. So perhaps she's comfortable addressing that one, at least for now, and then we can determine if we need any more.
Certainly. Director Mighton, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, some of that other one, council made the changes of how they were reimbursing for professional development to a flat up to a maximum of $1,500. The intention was that it would include all registration, mileage, travel, hotel room charges, incidentals, meals, and parking. So that's why it was slightly different than the staff portion there. And we could perhaps, the other item is the reference in 1B, because it was started partway through the year in 2021. That's why that clause was there. So it doesn't need, we could eliminate that and just change it to provide for clarity the definition of all expenses referred to in 1A shall mean, and include the list of everything that you're intending to include in your $1,500 maximum annual allotment.
Back to you, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if I'm aligning with the clerk, I'd rather if we just do the first and second and come back with some additional, perhaps even a staff report to outline our understanding of where we're at, and then bring this bylaw back for the third reading.
Okay. Any other questions, members of council? Councillor Shea.
Yes, no, that's fine. I'm happy to embrace that process, but I would ask you to consider one other thing. $1,500 annually, including all expenses. Then expenses are itemized in item C, parking, meals, room charges, etc. And then further on, it says there will be a remuneration of a per diem. Is that included in the 1,500? The way it's written, it's not. The way I read it, it's not included, but should it be included?
Madam CEO, I'll go to you, and then if you require, I'll go to the Director of Finance. Director Mighton, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, when the council was originally drafting this, the intention was that per diems would be outside of that $1,500, but the per diems would only be eligible, if you will, if it was for a conference that was within that $1,500 maximum. I'm not sure if our wording is maybe clear, but so if we went over the maximum of our $1,500, that per diems for another conference that you attended at your own expense would not have an eligible per diem, but the per diems would be outside of the conference related expenses.
Okay, so just seeking some additional clarity on that, but otherwise I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council? So we don't have a motion on the floor, but it has been suggested for first and second reading only at this time. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Townsend? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hergert, are you seconding? Okay. Clerk Sharbutt, could you read the motion back, and then I will call the vote. Thank you.
Through Mayor, moved by Councillor Townsend and seconded by Councillor Hergert, that bylaw 46-2022, being a bylaw to establish a conference, seminar, and professional development policy for council and staff of the municipality of West Grey, be read a first and second time.
All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. 13.3, bylaw 47-2022, confirming the proceedings of council. Clerk Sharbutt, please.
Through Mayor, the recommendation is that bylaw 47-2022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hamilton. Questions on the motion? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Item 14, new business, NA, on this particular agenda. Item 15, announcements. In accordance with the West Grey procedural bylaw, comments are not debatable, nor shall they be introduced, nor shall they introduce new business. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. I'm going to begin. Grey Road 3 and Grey Road 4 roundabout. This is an announcement through Grey County. Grey County is in the design stage for the construction of a roundabout at the intersection of Grey Road 3 and Grey Road 4 in West Grey. The project is tentatively scheduled for construction during the summer of 2023. Through a successful application of the Ontario government's Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Communities Funding Stream, Grey County is partnering with the federal and provincial governments to fund this project. And the just for quick reference, you can see it on the website. Federal government, 50%, provincial government, 33.33%, Grey County, 16.67%. Public Information Center, due to the ongoing pandemic and as at the request of the county, a virtual Public Information Center video is available for viewing, and the video will provide additional information about the project and discuss the numerous safety benefits provided through the use of roundabouts. I'd encourage everyone to visit grey.ca and just look at that. That's all the information for now. I will continue to report back as usual on any other items. Is there any announcements, members of council, that you wish to bring forward? I'm looking over to my right, including the on screen. On to my left, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody about homecoming, but more importantly, the website is really beginning to develop. If you haven't gone to it lately, durhamhomecoming.ca, yeah, I think it's .ca. You can buy tickets. You can see the schedule of events that's revolving from the Friday right through to Thursday right through to the Sunday. You can buy memorabilia, to wear, to keep, whichever the case may be. But it's really working out to a lot of detail at this point. So share it as well and encourage others to purchase, attend, and support. Thank you.
Councillor Hergert.
I've had a couple concerns from residents. There's an advertisement in the Hanover Post this week citing a phone number for the 519-369-3046. This is in the advertisement of the West Grey Police Association. Some members of the public are concerned that that is taxpayer paid phone line, and any additional activities that the association would be doing should be off of the taxpayer dollar. There also are concerns about the West Grey Police Service logo being utilized throughout the community, that some members of the community are citing 2 years ago in Nova Scotia that the police emblem was misused and it took the lives of several people. And we do not need any further confusion on the matter. And in an effort to promote public safety, I would like to have this addressed at the next meeting on Friday, which I'll attend. Thank you.
So now we're not seeing any other item, and this is just on announcements here. Item 16, closed session. Clerk Sharbeck to the recommendation, please.
For the closed session? Yes. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey does now go into a closed session at 12:27 p.m. with the CAO, Director of Legislation Clerk, Director of Finance Treasurer, and Legislative Coordinator. And yes, that's it. Sorry, for the purpose of addressing personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor, questions on the motion to go in camera? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. We will now go into closed session.
So, Mayor Robinson. Mayor Robinson. Just to note that with Councillor Hutchinson.
Councillors, we are now in closed session, so please pay attention to the agenda, please. Clerk Sharbeck.
Just with Councillor Hutchinson attending remotely, we just need a couple of minutes to make sure that members of the public are basically moved back from our electronic council chambers to our electronic waiting room.
Thank you.
That makes sense.